Please leave a comment where in the world you are listening from. So seriously, I should have been one of those Netflix specials by now. You know, she thought she was just going on a Tinder date, but what happened next will shock you. So a couple of months ago, I was in one of those moods, post-breakup, eating ice cream straight out of the tub, and scrolling through TikTok until your thumb goes numb. My friends had been nagging me to get back out there and meet someone new, so I figured why not. I downloaded Tinder, told myself it was just for fun, and started swiping. That's when I matched with Ethan. Ethan was, well, let's just say he had the kind of rugged, outdoorsy vibe that makes you think, this man has definitely chopped wood shirtless before. His pictures were all hot guy starter pack, hiking in the mountains, holding a dog, classic move, and one artsy black and white shot where he was staring off into the distance like he was contemplating life, or maybe just trying to figure out how to spell charcuterie. His bio was short and sweet: photographer, adventurer, lover of scary movies and late-night conversations. Let's grab a drink and talk about life. Now, I'm a sucker for scary movies and guys with beards, so obviously I swiped right. We started chatting, and surprise, surprise, he was actually funny. Like, genuinely funny. Not the LOL, I give out of politeness funny, but the kind where I was actually laughing at his messages. He made a joke about how his dog was his most stable relationship, and I was hooked. After a few days of texting, Ethan asked me out for dinner. He suggested this cute Italian place downtown, and I thought, wow, a guy who knows how to plan a date? This is promising. Spoiler alert, it wasn't. The night of the date, I did the usual pre-date routine, tried on 14 different outfits, curled my hair twice, and spent way too long debating whether red lipstick was hot or trying too hard. By the time I left the house, I was feeling pretty good. When I got to the restaurant, Ethan was already there, waiting outside. He looked just like his photos, which was a relief because, let's be real, the bar for online dating is please don't catfish me. He gave me this big, warm smile and said, "Hey, you made it." The first half of the date was fine. Great, even. We ordered wine, shared some garlic bread, and talked about everything from our favorite movies to the weirdest things we'd ever eaten. He said kangaroo. I said a gas station hot dog at 3 a.m. Ethan was charming, attentive, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. But then about halfway through the meal, things started to get weird. It started small. Ethan kept glancing over my shoulder, like he was watching someone, or something, behind me. At first, I thought maybe he was just nervous or distracted, but it kept happening. Every few minutes, his eyes would flicker to the side, and his smile would falter just a little. "Is everything okay?" I finally asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh yeah," he said, waving it off. "Just thought I saw someone I know." I let it go because, honestly, I didn't want to ruin the vibe. But then, when the waiter came by to refill our drinks, Ethan asked for the check. "Already?" I asked, laughing. "What? Are you allergic to good pasta?" He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Nah, just thought we could go somewhere quieter. You know, talk more without all the noise." Now, this is where most people would probably think, that's kind of weird. But my dumb brain was like, wow, he really wants to get to know me. How sweet. After we left the restaurant, Ethan suggested we go for a walk. It was a nice night, and the area was pretty busy, so I didn't think much of it. We strolled down the street, talking about random stuff, and eventually ended up in this little park. Here's the thing about parks at night. They're either super romantic or super creepy, and this one was leaning hard toward creepy. The streetlights were dim, the trees cast these long, spooky shadows, and there was this weird, eerie quiet that made my skin crawl. But Ethan didn't seem bothered at all. If anything, he seemed excited. "This is nice, huh?" he said, looking around. "Yeah, super cozy," I said, trying to sound chill while also glancing over my shoulder every 5 seconds. Then he stopped walking, turned to me, and said, "Hey, let me show you something." Now at this point, my gut was like, girl, do not follow this man. But my brain, powered by years of bad decisions and horror movie naivety, thought, what's the worst that could happen? Ethan led me down this little path, away from the main part of the park. The further we went, the darker it got, and the more I started to regret every life choice that had led me to this moment. "Where are we going?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light even though my heart was pounding. "You'll see," he said, flashing me a grin that, in hindsight, was way too confident. We finally stopped in this clearing, and Ethan pointed to something on the ground. It was a small black bag, like one of those gym bags people use to carry their stuff. "What's that?" I asked, my voice a little shaky. "Just something I left here earlier," he said, crouching down to unzip it. Okay, let me pause here and say, this was the moment I should have run. Like full-on sprinted back to civilization. But instead, I just stood there frozen as Ethan pulled out duct tape. I wish I could tell you I handled this situation like a badass. I wish I'd grabbed a rock and knocked him out or screamed for help. But no, my fight or flight response decided to take a third option. Stand there like an idiot and pray this isn't happening. What's that for? I asked, my voice cracking. Ethan looked up at me, and for a split second, his charming facade slipped. His expression turned cold, calculating. Oh, don't worry, he said, his tone way too casual. It's not for you. Not for me. What kind of answer is that? At this point, my brain finally caught up with the situation, and I did what any self-respecting person would do. I lied my ass off. Oh my God, I said, clutching my stomach. I think I'm gonna be sick. Ethan blinked, clearly caught off guard. What? Yeah, I think that pasta didn't agree with me, I said, doubling over for dramatic effect. I need to go. Like now. He hesitated for a second, then sighed and said, All right, let me walk you back. But I wasn't about to let him get me alone again. No, it's fine, I said quickly. I'll call an Uber. I didn't wait for him to argue. I pulled out my phone, pretended to call a ride, and started speed walking back toward the main street. The whole way back, I could feel Ethan watching me. He didn't follow, but I swear I could hear his footsteps just behind mine, soft and deliberate. When I finally made it to the main road, I turned around, and he was gone. I got in the first Uber I saw and didn't stop shaking until I was home. This took place a while ago, 2015-ish, but I'll probably never forget it. I, around 21 at the time, female, was still fairly new in my city. I had just gotten out of a bad relationship, wasn't in the best place mentally, and didn't know a lot of people in town besides my ex and his friends. I was on a dating/hookup app looking for people to hang out casually with, maybe find a FWB or something. I had matched with a 25-year-old guy, Simon. We talked sporadically in the app for a few days. He explained he was in a band and living in a house with his bandmates. He sent me their music. It was just audio on YouTube with a heavily edited still image of 4 or 5 guys playing rock instruments. One of them looked like him. The music was an interesting combination of styles and not really for me, but whatever. He seemed like a nice enough guy. He stopped replying for a few days, and I figured that was that, moved on. Then one day I was at work and got a message from him saying sorry, he'd been so busy, and inviting me to a barbecue with his friends and bandmates in their yard. He had explained that their band manager was providing them the house to live in. Based on the lack of views on the YouTube video, and the fact I only saw one photo of him playing in the band, I figured he was probably exaggerating the band manager thing. I thought it was more likely something along the lines of a bar manager friend, giving them a discount on rent in exchange for being a house band at their bar or something, and didn't think much of it beyond that. Normally I would have just said no to going to a barbecue alone at the home of someone I really didn't know. But I was really bored and figured I might be able to overcome some social anxiety, and maybe even make some female friends there since he made it sound like a pretty big party. I put the neighborhood he gave me into maps, and it was a suburban or with lots of families as far as I knew. I figured being in a yard on such a nice summer day wouldn't be overly risky, because lots of neighbors would be outside. Plus it was just a few train stops away from my workplace, and I was off in a few hours. I did tell him I wasn't overly comfortable with the idea since I didn't know him well, but I would stop by for a bit if I didn't need to go inside the house at all. He said that was totally fine, which made me feel a lot better. I even made sure to not drink anything for the rest of my shift, so I wouldn't be risking needing to go inside to use the bathroom. I was anxious about just showing up to a barbecue with people I didn't know at all, as he implied that the event was already underway. Plus I would have had a hard time finding a specific address from the backyard side, so I asked Simon if he could meet me at the train station since he said it was a quick walk anyway. He agreed to do that, and I let him know when I was leaving work and what time maps said the train would get to his station. I sent Simon a message to tell him that I had arrived at the train station around 5:30 after I looked around and couldn't find him. He told me he was running behind, and to just start walking toward the neighborhood. I was about halfway across the massive train station parking lot when I saw him slowly wandering toward me. I recognized his clothes, wearing bell-bottoms when they were not common, especially for men, and long hair from far away, but up close his face looked pretty different from his photos. It might have been some heavy-duty editing, I don't even know, but he kinda looked like a different guy. Older looking than the 25-year-old guy in the photos by 5 to 10 years. Maybe used photos of his brother or something. I don't even know, it was before AI. This was the first real red flag, but I brushed it off. Maybe he's just self-conscious. Maybe he smokes a lot and doesn't wear sunscreen and hasn't taken pictures in a while. All of his pictures looked candid, so I figured he wasn't much of a selfie guy. And besides, I'm mostly here to make friends anyway, so I shouldn't judge his appearance so harshly. He was also clearly already drunk, but a lot of my ex's friends were heavy drinkers, so that didn't seem strange. He's hosting a barbecue after all. The second red flag came shortly after when we arrived at the front door. I reminded him that I wasn't comfortable going inside the house, but he assured me we would just have to walk through to get to the backyard. Okay, fine. It wasn't the kind of neighborhood where you could just walk around the house to get to the backyard. We would have had to backtrack to the main road to go down the alley directly to the backyard. I figured he just forgot what I said about not wanting to go inside and didn't want to cause a bunch of trouble, so I went with it. We got in the house and he immediately closed the door and locked the deadbolt and knob behind me. I didn't think that was too weird since nobody was hanging out inside and a lot of people are just in the habit of locking the door when they come in, but it did still give me the heebie-jeebies for some reason. Then Simon told me he'd really like to give me a tour of the house. I politely declined and reminded him that I was just there for the barbecue. He said that he and his bandmates had worked really hard to get the house and he was really proud of it. At that point I was getting really skeptical, because usually when guys would tell me things that seemed a bit far-fetched, they'd let the truth slip by the time they got me to their house. But still, I convinced myself that I was being unreasonable. I was already in the stupid house anyway. He insisted it'd be quick. Not the wisest choice, I know. But I was pretty good at explaining away red flags, so at this point Simon still mostly had a dopey stoner art guy kind of vibe as far as I was concerned. He really didn't seem like a threat, just an insecure oddball who sucks at communicating and fibs a bit. Not unlike my ex, who was definitely emotionally and verbally abusive, but it never escalated past that. I figured at worst he'd get handsy, and I'd get called a prude for not sleeping with him. I didn't have a lot of self-worth at the time obviously, so I went with it. The tour started pretty uneventfully other than that the decor in the common areas was obviously chosen by a middle-aged Martha Stewart enthusiast, and not a bunch of guys in a band or their fake band manager. I didn't know if this should make me feel better or worse. On one hand, he was clearly lying, but on the other it made me think it was probably just someone's mom's house and she was out of town, and he didn't want to tell me he lived at a friend's parents' home and didn't actually have a paying job. Again, total red flag, but I could rationalize it at the time. The bedroom doors were all closed, bathroom was unremarkable. He then showed me the kitchen, and I finally saw through the window that there was nobody in the backyard. There weren't even barbecue supplies around. No burgers thawing on the counter, no cocktail supplies lying around, nothing. I asked him where everyone was and why he lied about the barbecue, and he told me that his bandmates were on tour still. They were just running behind due to van trouble, but they should be back any minute, so we could start the party. I asked him why he wasn't on tour with them if he's in the band. I don't even remember what his answer was to that, because it didn't make any sense. At this point I'm out of mental gymnastics to convince myself that this guy isn't just completely full of shit, and I'm really freaked out. It took me long enough. I'm smarter now, don't worry. I started trying to figure out a way to get out of this situation. I hoped that once he was done the tour we could go outside, even just for a minute, and I'd just leave. I'd been in some sketchy situations in the past, but luckily nothing so bad that they tried very hard to physically stop me when I walked away in a semi-public place. I just wasn't comfortable doing it inside the house. I knew this guy was full of shit, but I had no idea how much worse it would get. I instinctively pretended to believe his bullshit. He offered me a beer. I said no thanks because I had to work in the morning. He said okay and cracked one for himself. Then he wanted to take the tour downstairs. I could see from the top of the stairs that the basement was the dark and creepy kind with really small windows, so I refused. I asked if we could go back outside. He said after the tour. I tried to argue about going into the basement, told him I have a spider phobia, don't like basements, etc. All lies, but anything that wouldn't let him realize that he was what I was afraid of. He started to get agitated about my reluctance, so I figured it would be better to just let him show me the damn basement, and then hopefully we could go outside, because I really didn't know what else to do. The basement was fairly unremarkable. Couch, TV, elliptical. Until I noticed something that gave me chills. The house was probably built in the 1990s or late 80s at the absolute earliest, but I saw a door that looked just like the heavy, foam-lined door to the cold storage room in my grandma's house. The kind that only opened from the outside. It was just a smaller version of the big metal doors on commercial walk-in fridges. It looked really out of place in this house. I would absolutely not go anywhere near that door. He opened it and told me it was their soundproof music studio. I looked inside from a few meters away. It did indeed look soundproof. It was about the size of a bedroom, and I could see a few guitars and amps in it. Mattress toppers on the walls. No drum kit or recording equipment that I could see. He insisted I go inside to get a better look. He was standing outside the door motioning for me to go inside. Holy shit, the alarm bells are really going off now. At this point I realized I could totally die here if I'm not careful, and I turned around to run up the stairs. He closed the door and followed me, asking what's wrong, acting like I'm being all unreasonable for not wanting to see his soundproof music studio. So I'm realizing that this is a way sketchier situation than any of my ex's bullshit, and I'm freaked right out. At that point my main objective was getting out of the house. The front and back doors were both closed and locked, so if I tried to run, he'd be able to get to me before I could get the locks open. The bathroom did not have a window. The house had a convoluted floor plan that I wasn't familiar with, and he was much bigger than I am. He was the tall, lanky type, who can run fast even if they're out of shape and smoke a pack a day. I pretended that I was okay with hanging out with him in the hopes that he'd chill out a bit. We made small talk for a few minutes. He cracked another beer, and thankfully he calmed down. I desperately mentioned yet again that it was beautiful outside, and suggested we go sit in the yard while we wait. He said no and started to get agitated that I wanted to leave already. I told him that I could stay, but I'd just really like to smoke a cigarette. He told me that we could smoke cigarettes inside, and pointed to a cereal bowl full of cigarette butts. God damn it. We sat down at the table and lit some cigarettes. As he was smoking, he started rolling a joint, which he promptly lit as soon as his cig was done. He offered me some, and I said no thanks. He insisted, so I took the smallest puff I could. I'm a pretty seasoned weed smoker, but I pretended to cough excessively and told him I'm a novice, so that's more than enough for me. For a liar himself, he thankfully wasn't very good at picking up on the lies of others. After we smoked, he asked if I'd like to watch a movie until his bandmates get back. I told him that I was really looking forward to spending the day outside, and suggested we go for a walk or visit the park. Ideas he did not like or appreciate. At this point I was trying to keep as much distance as possible between us, but he stayed close enough to me that I could smell the beer on his breath. He grabbed me by the waist, and then I backed away and asked about the barbecue food to try and change the subject and make him think I still believed what he was telling me. He started to get angry again and sternly reiterated that his bandmates should be home any minute, and my anxiety was absolutely through the roof. I tried to calm him down again with generic small talk. Now I don't know how I got so lucky, but the next thing that happened might have saved me. Simon went to the fridge to get another beer and pulled out an empty box. At this point he's getting even more pissed off than before, so I went out on a limb and suggested we go get some more beer for the party, because I was out of ideas. I was terrified that it would enrage him even more to suggest, once again, that we leave the house, but I had to try. Thankfully, though, his eyes lit up with the possibility that I could actually be down to drink with him, and he agreed. As we were walking to the liquor store, I still didn't really have a plan, because I was no longer comfortable just walking away from this fucking menace in this weirdly desolate suburb. But I was extremely relieved to be out of that house. I walked with him to the liquor store, and when we got there told him I didn't need to go inside if he was just going to go grab some beer. He insisted that I had to go inside. At that point I was so stressed and frazzled, I just went with him, and hoped that a good opportunity to leave would arise. When we got inside the liquor store, he asked what kind of beer I wanted. I reminded him that I had to work tomorrow, and didn't want to drink much. He demanded to know what kind of beer I wanted, so I just named the first one that came to mind. We went to pay. The cashier was kind of an asshole, so I didn't ask for help. I probably should have, but I panicked and didn't. I hoped there might be somebody in the parking lot who might help me if I made a scene, but there was nobody. I really regretted not asking the liquor store guy for help, but also remembered the times my ex told people I was crazy, so they wouldn't take me seriously. Liquor store guy definitely seemed like he would have fell for that, so probably for the best I didn't expect him to help me. I had one last idea before I took my chances just trying to run and or scream. There was a drugstore across from the liquor store. I told Simon I had to go buy a toothbrush or some shit that vaguely implied I might stay over. He eagerly agreed to this, but tried to follow me into the store. I told him that you're not allowed to bring beer into a drugstore. I don't know if that's even true. I really doubt it's any kind of law, but luckily this drunk douchebag believed it and agreed to wait outside. Now, my naive ass thought maybe I could just wander around in this drugstore for long enough, and he would either get the hint or get sketched out or bored and leave. But no, I must have wandered around the store for at least half an hour, and this jackass is still just standing there staring in the window. This creep didn't even have his phone out. Every time I checked if he was still there, he was just staring through the window looking for me. I didn't feel like I had anybody I could call in the city to come help me. The cops here don't usually take things like this very seriously, and the store workers looked like they were mostly high school students, and I didn't want to drag them into this, so I really didn't feel like I had a lot of options. After being in there for so long, I was surprised he didn't come in to see what was taking me so long. I thought maybe I could lose him in the aisles and sneak out of the store if he did come in, but nope. I ended up hovering around the tills and waited until a big group of friendly-looking people were paying. I followed them out of the store and immediately told Simon to leave me alone and go home. I said it firmly and loudly enough to imply that I would make a scene if need be. Simon looked at the people getting in their car, who were now pausing and looking at us because I had nearly yelled at him, and then he just turned around and left. It was bizarrely anticlimactic, which I was very thankful for. I ran to the train station, which thankfully was in a different direction than his house from the store, and I never heard from him again. When I got home, his app profile had either blocked me or been deleted. Years later, after I stopped compartmentalizing the whole thing, I wish I would have reported him or something. It bothers me to wonder if he tried it again with someone else, but made sure the fridge was stocked first. But at the time I didn't think anybody would take me seriously. I was embarrassed of my choices, and I just wanted to move on from the whole thing. Plus, all I really had was a likely fake first name and a general idea of where the house was, which probably wasn't even his. I'll probably never know any more than I do now, and maybe that's for the best. Anyway, Simon, you lying POS, let's not meet. In my early 20s, I met a man on a hookup app and agreed to go to a barbecue he and his bandmates were hosting at their house in the suburbs. When I met up with him, he was really drunk, looked different from his photos, his bandmates were nowhere to be found, and the decor in the house didn't look like it was theirs. He locked the door and got angry every time I asked to go outside. After a tour of the house that included a soundproof music studio and no evidence of a barbecue, I was able to escape by suggesting we visit the liquor store together after he ran out of beer, and telling him to leave me alone once we were around a group of people. 2008. Met what I initially thought was a cute and interesting guy in a tattoo shop. Had a brief conversation, he seemed fun, we swapped numbers. Over the course of a week we talked on the phone a few times, texted, during which he seemed smart, funny, well traveled. We set up a date for drinks at a pub halfway between our respective homes on a Wednesday night. He turns up stumbling, reeking of alcohol. I'm immediately turned off but give him the benefit of the doubt, thinking maybe he's just nervous and had a couple of drinks. But as we sit down and start talking, I realize he's not so much drunk as high as a kite. And he drove there. Proceed to have a drink together. I'm here now, right? And he's talking very fast, non-stop, tells me he has 2 children he never sees, and proceeds to unload bitterly about his ex-baby mama. He keeps leaning in closer, even though I have given no interested signals. His personality is nothing like the phone conversations we have had at all. This went on for maybe half an hour, during which I had 2 drinks and he downed 6 beers. So I go to the loose and come back saying I'm feeling tired and I'm going to head home since I have work the next day. He invites me to come and have a lie down back at my place, giving me the address, and then tells me it is actually a caravan parked out the front of his friend's place, which has everything but a bathroom, so we can just shower in the house the next morning. I decline politely. He offers to walk me to my car. I say no thanks, I'm good, as I'm literally 3 car spaces from the pub door. Proceeds to stumble there with me anyway, then gets between me and the driver's door, still babbling away, and leans in for a kiss. I'm like, okay, let's get this over with fast, or I won't be able to open my car door. Give him the tightest, close-lipped peck and get in the car. He is still leaning on the door and trying to kiss me again through the car window. I'm like, well, gotta go and drive home. During the 30-minute drive home, my phone pings with 3 texts. I get in and read them. They're all from him. Let me know when you get home safe. Are you home yet? Well, I'm thinking, how did this date go? And yeah, I would like to see you again, lol. So I just text back, sorry, but no thanks. Put my phone, old Nokia, it's 2008. on silent on charge in the living room, and go to bed. In the morning my phone has blown up with missed calls and maybe 30 texts from this clown, which range from, "Why can't we have a second date?" to "Why won't you answer?" to, "Oh, so you think you're too good for me? Go to hell, bitch," to "Look, sorry, I didn't mean that, but why won't you give me a chance and get to know me?" I was stunned. I just ignored all of it. 2008, couldn't block a number like now. And it actually went on for 2 weeks, a few missed calls and a barrage of texts until finally he gave up. What a complete pain in the arse. Met a guy on Bumble when I was in college and chatted for a few days. He asked me out on a date and wanted to take me to a cocktail bar. I declined that spot as I'm not a drinker, also why a cocktail bar on first meeting. Said he'll find something else. Day comes and he demands my address to send an Uber. I declined, said I'll drive myself. Obviously for safe measures, if something went wrong I would be able to leave when I wanted. He insisted and demanded I not bring a car. I was annoyed and sent an address down the street from me and waited there to be picked up. I got dolled up and hoped for the best. Unsure where the destination was, 2 the Uber stops and lo, and behold, it's the damn cocktail bar that I said no to. My mood went back down instantly. I walk in and call him to see where he is, and he tells me he's not there yet. He lives down the street, so he was going to get ready and walk when I arrived. Once again I was annoyed. It took him about 10 to 15 minutes to walk to the bar. He walks in in his gym attire, some super short-ass shorts and an old tee. He mentioned he came from the gym like an hour ago and was chilling until the date. I was once again annoyed and at this point lost interest that he didn't bother to even change. The menu is handed over, and of course I don't look at it cause I don't drink. He asks what would I like, it's on him. I repeat again that I do not like drinking. He acts surprised as if we didn't have this conversation prior to meeting when I had declined the initial offer to meet at a bar. Mind you, this cocktail bar was a themed one. The menu was full of cocktails based on local things like the college or characters, etc. The only food on the menu was like some bread and charcuterie board type foods. I wasn't interested. Anyway, we're in there for about 15 minutes as he ordered 2 drinks, one for himself and me. I took a small sip and then watched him down both small glasses. We then leave. He asks me if I want to go back to his place. I say no. He then asks why. I say 'cause I don't want to, and we don't know each other well. He then says, "Okay, let's go see a movie." I say sure, a movie won't hurt, maybe I'm overreacting. He calls an Uber. We get in. The ride lasts about 5 minutes. I know that there is no movie theater this close. The Uber pulls into an apartment complex. My heart drops. I'm over it. We hop out the car, and he pulls me through the lobby. I'm making a sour face, and he questions me. I tell him that I made it clear that I did not want to come to your apartment. He says his apartment has a huge TV room, and he'll put on a movie for us to watch. That's not what I was expecting when he said, "Let's go to the movies." Now I'm really regretting not having my car on hand. I reluctantly sit in the TV room, and he puts on some kiddie YouTube show. He likes engrossed in it. I'm confused. He then tries to turn my face for a kiss, but is constantly distracted by the YouTube show staring at it while trying to pull me closer. As I keep pulling away, he asks why I won't let him kiss me. I say, "Why should I? I don't know you." He's offended now and storms out. I see this as my chance of escape, so I run out after a minute and head down the first staircase I see. I run to the bottom and hide under the stairs before I leave. Since I'm unsure of my location, I wanted to see what's nearby and if I was near a bus stop or a restaurant to hide in. I wait about 5 minutes, and he is blowing up my phone. I put it on D&D. I run out and immediately start heading towards my heaven. I make it down the street, and I hear someone yelling. I don't turn around. There's lots of college kids being loud. Then I hear my name. "Fuck me, bro." He runs UPS to me as I reach an intersection, so I have to stop. He like, "Where'd you go? Where are we walking right now?" I'm like, "I'm going home." He freaks out on me, saying I should have told him I don't drink. I should have told him that I didn't want to come back to his apartment, which I did. He then says, "I called you, and you didn't answer. Show me your phone right now." Did you block me? Show me your phone. Mind you, all of this is coming from a man I just met a few hours ago in person. I walk off, only telling him that for starters I don't owe him anything, especially not access to my phone. And secondly, that he made me highly uncomfortable, and I will not be seeing him again. I walk away for about 20 minutes to make sure he wasn't following me, and then I called an Uber back home. Matched with this guy. We talked for a little bit, and we didn't really seem to have anything in common, so I didn't plan on going out with him. When I finally did decline, he threw a fit and pestered me, promising a lovely night out and to just give him a chance. That should have been my first clue. Now, at this point in my life, I was admittedly very picky about guys I'd go out with, and this guy as well as my roommates encouraged me to just go because maybe I'm missing out on nice people. Fine. We go to sushi. No attraction. Nothing in common. Horrible conversation. Every time I tried to lead with a subject, he ended it. What's your favorite restaurant? I don't know. Did you play any sports? No, the conversation was a dead end at every turn. Had a terrible time, good sushi though. I insisted I pay half the bill, and we walked out. Then he grabbed me by the arm aggressively, insisting we go to Starbucks for coffee. I said no thank you, I just ate. I'm very full. I have a test tomorrow, whatever. But he literally overpowered me and pulled me in and sat us down at a table. Now I was freaked out. We sat awkwardly, silently. I asked, "Are you getting coffee or?" He smiled and said, "No, I don't want any." I said, "Okay, so why are we he?" And he slipped his hand between my thighs and credit carded me under the table. I was mortified and moved away. I said, "I am going to go home now." I thank God I drove separately. As I got to my car, he asked, "So when can we go out again?" I almost laughed at him, but I was polite because I'm a huge pussy. I said, "Well, you're very nice, Lai, but we don't have much in common and I didn't really feel the chemistry, but thanks for showing me a new sushi restore." "You fucking cunt. You're just the same as all women. I thought you were different. You dumb bimbo piece of shit. Fuck you." I got in my car and left. When I got home, I had many texts from him and his roommate. From date guy, I got a lot of "fuck you," and from the roommate I got a few angry/concerned ones like, "My roommate came home really upset and pissed. What the fuck did you do to him? You're a bitch." I literally had no idea people could be like that. It really soured my Tinder experience, but I had fun laughing at the texts with my own roommates. Credit carded means he swiped up my lady bits with a flat hand, like a credit card in a slot. I meet a girl on Tinder. I think I won her over with my jokes about loving dirty socks and old Greg. We talk for a while and finally decide to go to a lake. We both love nature. We go meet, hug, and sit down on a blanket by the lake. We talk for a bit. After about 10 minutes, I hear a splat. She looks down and laughs. I look down at her leg. There, sitting there on her right leg, is a big, white, pebbly bird shit. I ask, "Did a bird just shit on your leg?" She says, "Yes," and laughs again. Before the date, we promised no bullshit. We must be ourselves. I don't think before I catch myself wiping the bird shit off her leg with my hand. I go to the lake, wash my hand off, and go sit back down. We have a little laugh, talk for another couple hours, and decide to call it a night. We go back to our cars, and I go to give her the goodbye. I wasn't sure if I should give her a hug or kiss at this point. I didn't want to be invasive. As I'm hugging her and thinking about the kiss, I start to get a boner. I start to regret the decision to wear athletic shorts. I think I have two options: turn around after the hug and walk back to my car, try to conspicuously tuck the boner into my waistline of my athletic shorts, and go for the kiss. I go for option 3. I'm getting a boner, I can't keep hugging you. We laugh. I hug her again and say, "I'll talk to you soon." We promised we'd be honest. But on my way back to my car I just keep thinking, shit, too honest, too honest. I turn on my car and wait to see if she's going to leave first. Then she gets out of her car and walks towards me with something in her hands. I roll down my window. "You forgot the banana bread I made you." I couldn't believe I made her come back to the awkwardness to make her give me the banana bread she made for me. I take it from her, we both still laugh a bit about the boner thing, and I put the banana bread on my passenger seat. Then, and this is the part one still can't believe, she leans in. We kiss. A gentle, small, but amazing kiss. She walks back to her car and drives away. I do a couple fist pumps and then drive home. On my way home, I start to question what the fuck just happened. So much about myself to doubt, but so much greatness to it. What just happened? I'm driving home and Bohemian Rhapsody comes on. I have a Wayne's World moment. I will not let you go. Fast forward 3 months. We're still talking. I saw her tonight. We went to a creek again. We have gotten poison ivy from each other, been camping, shared great music. It has all been so great. I don't ever want to leave her. When we look back, she says I won her over when I wiped the bird shit off her leg. Needless to say, that bird was my wingman. Right. So I was in Shanghai for work and decided to see what was happening on Tinder. I had to use a VPN to get around the Great Firewall. Anyway, matched with a girl and chatted briefly. She asked if I wanted to meet at her hotel for a drink. Alarm bells should have been ringing Willy. So I shower up, pop a breath mint, and smash out a Lucky Panda cigarette whilst flagging down a cab. I get to her hotel, and to my astonishment, she is the woman in the profile, waiting for me at the hotel bar. Have a few cocktails and things are going well. She's friendly, seems really into me. Then she asks if I want to go up to her room for some more drinks. Dear diary, jackpot. So we make our way upstairs, and she doesn't waste any time and jumps straight in. When all was said and done, I thought, right, time to do the Shanghai shuffle. So I'm putting my clothes on and about to leave, and she weighs, "What about my money, baby?" My heart sinks quicker than a mob snitch swimming in concrete boots. I ask her what she means. Not for free sex, 3,000 renminbi. She replies, which is just shy of $500. Fuck me, I just rooted a hooker. So a heated argument begins, and I'm planning my escape, lest there be a pimp waiting outside. She starts screaming at me, and hotel security arrive on the scene, and hustle me down to the lobby. She follows in tow demanding her money, screaming, yelling, making a scene. Everyone's looking. I've really hit rock bottom here. Then I see someone get out of a cab outside the hotel entrance. I gap it and leap into the cab, telling the driver to drive in the worst Chinese possible. I probably said something offensive, but the power of the almighty yuan saves the day, and he speeds off, taking me back to my hotel, where I can hit a bottle of scotch and reflect on what the actual fuck just happened. So I shoplifted a hooker in Shanghai. The night I first met Emily, it felt like the universe had finally thrown me a bone. Her photos didn't do her justice. She was stunning, the kind of beautiful that makes everyone else in the room fade into the background. But it wasn't just her looks. She had a spark, a confidence, and a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world she cared to talk to. I'd been on enough dates to know that kind of chemistry doesn't come around often, or ever. Our date was straightforward. Dinner at a cozy little Italian spot, followed by a walk through the park. Nothing fancy, but it didn't need to be. The conversation flowed effortlessly, punctuated by her light, melodic laugh and the occasional shy smile that seemed out of place for someone so assured. By the time we said goodnight, I felt like I'd won the lottery. The next day, when she texted me inviting me to her friend's birthday party downtown, I didn't even hesitate. Sure, I had work the next morning, but when she sweetened the deal by offering her place as a crash pad, I was sold. Call it what you will, naivety, optimism, or just plain bad judgment, but I was all in. The party was in full swing when we arrived. The bar was packed, music thumping just loud enough to make conversation a challenge, but not impossible. Emily introduced me to her circle of friends, a lively group that welcomed me with open arms. Drinks flowed freely, laughter filled the air, and for a moment I thought to myself, this is it. I could get used to this. Then, out of nowhere, the night took a sharp left turn. It started small, something I almost didn't notice. Emily's laugh grew a little too sharp, her smile a little too tight. She'd glance at me, then at her friends, her eyes narrowing in ways I couldn't quite decipher. I chalked it up to the alcohol, or maybe some inside joke I wasn't privy to. But then it escalated. One moment we were standing at the bar, her hand casually resting on my arm as we talked to one of her friends. The next, she was shouting. Not at me, not at anyone in particular, just shouting. A burst of anger that seemed to come out of nowhere. Heads turned, conversations stopped, and before I could piece together what the hell was happening, she stormed out of the bar. I just stood there, stunned. Her friends exchanged awkward glances, a few of them muttering under their breaths. One of them, a guy named Trent, leaned in and said, "You should probably go after her." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "It's our second date," I said, shaking my head. Trent nodded, a smirk tugging at his lips. "Fair enough." And that was that. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I stayed at the party, nursing a glass of water and chatting with her friends, who, to my surprise, seemed genuinely interested in getting to know me. There was no judgment, no awkwardness, just a group of people having a good time. By the time I made it back to Emily's place, she was nowhere to be found. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and the lights were off. I debated whether to text her, but something told me to just let it go. I crashed on her couch and left early the next morning, leaving a polite, "Thanks for the invite" text she never responded to. What happened next was unexpected, to say the least. Over the following weeks, I started getting texts from her friends. Not Emily, but her friends. They'd invite me out for drinks, trivia nights, and the occasional backyard barbecue. At first, I felt weird about it, like I was betraying some unspoken rule of dating. But they were persistent, and honestly, they were a great group of people. As for Emily, she faded into the background. I'd hear snippets of gossip here and there. Something about a new boyfriend, a falling out with one of the girls, a job change, but nothing concrete. One night, months after the party, I finally asked Trent about it. We were sitting around a fire pit in his backyard, beers in hand, when I said, "So, what's the deal with Emily? Does she ever talk about that night?" Trent chuckled, taking a long sip of his beer before answering. "Man, Emily's complicated. She has this thing where she expects people to chase after her. Like literally. She pulls that stunt all the time, storming off, making a scene. It's like a test or something." "A test?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah. She wants to see if you'll drop everything for her. If you'll prove you care enough to come running. It's exhausting." "Sounds like it," I said, shaking my head. Trent shrugged. "She's not a bad person, just a lot. Honestly, I think you dodged a bullet." As time went on, my connection to Emily's friends only grew stronger. We became a tight-knit group, the kind of people you could call at 2 a.m. when your car broke down or when you needed someone to talk to. They never brought up Emily, and neither did I. It was as if she'd been erased from the narrative, a footnote in a story that had taken on a life of its own. But every now and then, late at night when the world was quiet and my mind wandered, I'd think about her. About that night at the bar, the look in her eyes as she stormed out, the way she'd captivated me on our first date. I'd wonder what might have been if I'd chased after her, if I'd played along with her test. And then I'd remember the laughter, the camaraderie, the friendships I'd gained by staying put. In the end, I realized some people come into your life like fireworks, dazzling, explosive, impossible to ignore. But fireworks are fleeting, burning out as quickly as they appear. Oh man, I met a guy from Tinder a few months ago. He seemed really normal, was a responsible adult with a job who didn't still live at home, and was pretty good looking. He lived one town over in a fairly rural area, so we actually had some mutual acquaintances. So far, so good. He asked if I wanted to meet up at one of the 2 bars in town to get to know each other. IRL LOL. So the night we're supposed to meet, I get stuck picking up some slack at work for a clerk who claims she's sick, but is really hungover. I texted him to let him know I was going to be about 20 minutes late. I found out pretty late in the day, and knew he was probably either getting ready or on his way there. So I was extremely apologetic and offered to pick up the tab when I got there. He said no problem. He'd hang out and have a drink until I got there. Fast forward to my rushing to get the hell out of work, slapping on some makeup, and walking into the bar. I missed him at first. I had to do that awkward walk and search thing, but eventually I saw the guy. He looked just like his picture, only 10 years older and 80 pounds heavier. And he was sloppy. Not dirty sloppy, but like lolling his head around and really sweaty. I figured whatever, I already came this far. Plus, pretty sure he saw me. I pulled up a chair and got as far as, "Hey, I'm See Me Disco," before he started yell talking. "Glad you're here, damn, I've been waiting a while. Had to have more than one drink, ha ha ha." Okay, whatever. He was probably nervous and a little drunk. Not the best first date in the world, but I could get through it. So I start to apologize again for being late, and I swear to God, he cuts me off with, "Look, if we're gonna do this thing, I need you to be on time, okay? I hate waiting." "Okay, sure. Sorry, you know how work is." "Yeah, whatever, that's why I quit my bullshit job. Hey, you want a drink? Or what, I'm having a Jack and Coke, or 5, ah ha 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 ha." I order a soda, and he gets all defensive. "What, you're trying to get out of here soon? That's bullshit. I need to know where this is headed. It's our first fucking date. Don't dick me around here. I'm looking for something serious. Either we're doing this, or we're not. Hey, can I get another Jack and Coke?" People were staring at us, and he was waving the hand he was holding his drink with and spilling it everywhere. I've never done this before, but I literally pulled an "I gotta go to the bathroom" and bailed. And I've never been on another Tinder date. Can't handle another first date where the guy gets pissed drunk before I even show and starts screaming about where the relationship is headed. Oh, I'm super later to the Tinder Tales party, but I've got a good one, so hopefully someone sees this and gets a kick out of it. A few years ago, I get out of a bad relationship and immediately jump into online dating as a distraction because, of course. Day 1, I pair off with a girl who looks just like my ex. Bad sign, I know, but I can't help myself. She and I meet, and she's younger than I thought. Maybe 22, but she's bright and bubbly and fun. So instead of grabbing coffee, I go all in and ask her to come get dinner. We split a burger, we're chatty, everything's great. So afterward she says let's go party at a bar. Awesome, this is going really well. We walk next door, and I lay my card down, open a tab, and excuse myself to the restroom. I come back out and Tinder Girl has grabbed a booth, a couple of beers, and 6 shots. I asked, where did these come from? And she says, oh, I thought you wanted to party with me, winky face. I'm pretty inhibition-free, so I downed 2 of the shots, and the look in her eye went from sweet and bubbly to tiger stalking prey. So she follows suit and downs 2 shots and most of her beer. Then she inhales the last shot and tells me, your turn. Now, I'm a 220 pounds guy. I can hang. She's a 100 pounds waif of a girl, but I didn't know what to expect. Sometimes the little ones can surprise you. Well, we order 2 more beers, and within 10 minutes she's surprising me. She presses up against me in the booth, and starts undoing my belt buckle and shoves her hand into my pants. So at like 8 p.m. in a half-empty bar, this girl straddles me in a booth, facing the window, and starts kissing my neck and giving me a handjob. And I'm looking around and all eyes are on us. There are even smokers watching from outside. I pull her off of me, and tell her this is way too much. Let's just bring it down a peg. And then she says to me, straight-faced, I've been with at least 200 other guys and nobody has ever told me no before. 200 guys? Listen, I'm all for enjoying yourself, but that I can't get with. Not on a first date. Not with my dick just moments ago in your hand. So we're both pretty drunk at this point, and I tell her I have to leave. This is way too much, way too soon. I walk outside, and she is right behind me. I'm hailing myself a cab, and she grabs me and says, where do you think you're going? I told her, home. I've had enough for tonight. Then she tells me, I'm coming with you. I live in Long Island, and I don't even know how to get home from here. WTF? This girl came an hour and a half into the city on the train, and is now literally beyond taking care of herself. She's almost falling over, and now I feel responsible for her. There's no way I can just leave her here, although I'm sure she can find some other schmuck to fall for her shit. The problem with all of this is that my female friend Asterisk, not GF, is crashing at my place that night because she had a gig nearby early the next morning. So now I've got to bring this super drunk, super horny girl back to my place, after I promised my friend a nice quiet place to crash. Gah! So Tinder Girl is blackout, drunk in the cab, trying to grope at me whenever she comes to. Now I'm just swatting her away like a lovesick puppy. I get us into my place and crash into everything trying to get her onto the couch. Mind you, I'm drunker than I thought. I put Tinder Girl down, and I lay on the other side of the couch. I have to assume my friend is woken up and can hear everything, but she doesn't come out into the living room to check. The girl is already snoring, and I close my eyes. And I go on to have a great dream about hooking up with my ex-GF, until I'm suddenly waking up in the pitch black, and the fucking drunk girl has my dick out and is jerking me off. I come to, and realize her clothes are completely off, and she's trying to climb on top of me. In any other situation I'd be psyched, but all I'm thinking about is the other 200 guys she's pulled this with, and no fucking way I'm letting her get me inside her. I had to fight her off even though half of me wants to just give in. But she's 100 pounds, and it's laughably easy to push her still drunk, tiny, naked ass off of me. I pull my pants up, and she crumples to the other side of the couch and starts sobbing. She tells me, you don't understand how hard it's been since my husband left me. I miss him so much. I just wanted you to fuck me. Why is that so hard? Husband left you? You're 22. WTF is going on here? And of course, this is when my friend comes out of the bedroom. At 4 a.m., with a sobbing drunk, naked, 100 pounds girl on my couch. And my friend asks me, what did you do to her? I brought my friend into the other room and explained, but I'm sure it just sounded like, I fed this girl shots and brought her home, and she's sad because I keep letting her touch my dick. So my friend tells me, I thought you were better than this, and leaves early for her gig. So I take my clothes off, crawl into my now free bed, and of course, drunk Tinder Girl climbs in riot behind me and starts spooning me. We're both defeated and exhausted, and a little hungover at this point, so we both settled for middle ground. We made out for a while, and she didn't try to rape me, and we both fell asleep. The next day, the bright, bubbly girl from the night before is back in her wits, and says, let's go get brunch. Yum, and grabs my hand to pull me out of bed. I got dressed, walked her downstairs and outside, and then immediately turned around and walked back inside and left her out there. And we never spoke again. It had been a while since I last had gotten some, so I tried Tinder to get some luck. Almost immediately I got a match. She lived 2 hours away, but was DTF, and that's a drive my dick was willing to take. We talk for a bit, and we exchange a few photos and decide to meet. I pick her up and immediately start noticing that something is off. She asks me to go to a coffee shop so we can talk before I intend to pound her into oblivion. She gets a triple shot espresso and downs it in seconds. She recommended we go to an abandoned cornfield and bone in my car. So she starts kissing me, and she's going at it like a Labrador. At one point she even licks the outside of my lips and my cheek, which made me slightly uncomfortable. I thought, fuck it, I may get my dick wet even if this girl is a freak. So we're both naked, I'm pounding away for what feels like forever, and after 20 minutes she's already finished, and I'm trying very, very hard to get there. But for some reason I can't. She tries going down on me, and hurricanes on my dick, teeth and all, grinding up my shaft. I ask her to hop back on so we can keep going. Right in the middle of reverse cowgirl, I hear a knock. I look to my left, and there's this scraggly old man with a double barrel tapping on my window. She doesn't hop off, but covers her chest as this man signals me to roll down my window. Considering he looks like a pissed-off hillbilly, and he has a shotgun, I oblige. The next thing that I hear rocked me to my soul, and I will never forget what he says. He cackles out with a serious face and a slow southern drawl. This ain't no lover's lane. I start stammering an apology and push this crazy chick who is unfazed off of my dick, hop into the driver's seat, and floor it out of that cornfield. She just quits talking to me at that point, puts her clothes on, and just stares out the window while I'm going 60 down a gravel road in nothing but a white t-shirt and a soggy condom on my limp dick. We stop by some abandoned shack, and I clean up while she continues to stare out the window. When I get back in, she tells me to drop her off at the DQ down the road. I'm happy to oblige and very politely kick her the fuck out of my car. She throws a $20 at me on her way out the door, goes to the garbage can and just vomits a torrent or brown-yellow puke all over the sidewalk and the side of the can. I nope the fuck out of there, confused, blue-balled, and scared. I've never heard from her since then, and have never used Tinder after that. So this was like 9 years ago, so before a lot of these online dating things. So believe it or not, we actually met on Xbox Live. And coincidentally, she lived like 45 minutes away from me. I was 19 at the time, she said she was 16, and she was hot, so I never much questioned things. We hit it off right away when we met online, when I was dicking around with one of my friends. So since we hit it off, we continued talking. It got along even better, video chats and whatnot. Finally, I get some free time, and my friend and I agree to meet up with her where she lives. We meet up, all three of us go out to a movie, I kiss her goodnight, we go on our way. We continue talking like normal, find time again in about a month, and this time my friend brings his girlfriend, and we have kind of a double date with a movie again. On the way back to her place, we basically devoured each other in the back seat of my friend's car. His girlfriend actually made an annoyed comment to me about it on the way back home, once we dropped her off. Anyway, time goes on, and about 3 weeks later she tells me it's her birthday. So I'm look, cool, you're turning 17 then? I'll see if we can do something. That's when she drops the bombshell. Actually, I'm turning 16. And the second she said that, it was like someone tied an anchor to my heart. I had a mini freak out in my head, but eventually managed to play it off with mild annoyance for her lying to me. I mean, she was hot. Drifting past our year-long relationship, which started a few months after that, and which I think only lasted so long because she liked having an older boyfriend to show off to her friends. We stayed friends after our breakup. About 2 years later we met up twice, and the second time when I was driving her back home we stopped off for some breakfast, and sat down at some breakfast place I can't recall. We started talking about the old days. We both had moved past each other, so it was more like just laughing about good times we had. And eventually she drops on me. I think my favorite part of our relationship was the fact that I could have ruined your life if I wanted to. And she was not even close to the craziest ex I've ever had. Hit me up on Tinder, and we quickly exchanged numbers. After numerous Snapchats and 3 hours have passed, she asked to meet up at an IHOP parking lot, an hour away. It was 2 a.m. at the time, and I had nothing else going on for the rest of the night, so I decided I'd give it a shot. I knew from the Snapchats that she wasn't a petite girl by any means, but I figured I'd give it a shot. It wasn't my first Tinder date, but this one was certainly the quickest first message to meet up I've had. On my hour drive over to IHOP, she informs me she brought her friend along to make sure I wasn't going to rape or hack up her body. Turned me off a little bit, because I assumed she would be a major obstacle for my ultimate goal for that night. So I finally pull into the parking lot, and I see her and her friend leaning up against the hood of their car. I'd be lying if I said she was under 200 pounds in all of her 5 feet 1 inch frame. I circled the building a couple times, trying to talk myself into leaving, but I had just driven an hour at 2 a.m. I wasn't going to just turn around and head back home, no way. So I parked next to them after just giving myself the pep talk of my adult life. We exchange formalities, and I get introduced to her friend. I understand strength in numbers, but the guy wasn't stopping me from doing anything malicious if that was my intent. He was about 5 feet 6 inches, 130 pounds. I'm 6 feet 2 inches, 210 pounds. He pretty much just looks at me and gets back in his car, and the ogre and myself make some awkward small talk outside of the car for a little while. So I get to the point of the conversation where things start getting heated. She initially asked me to make out with her in the back seat of her car, where her friend is sitting in the passenger seat. I shot that down real quick. She wasn't comfortable getting into my car for whatever reason. After she declined my request for my car, she wouldn't have fit anyway. At the time I was driving an Acura RSX. She invites me back to her brother's house where she is currently living. Instant red flag for me. I ask what's wrong with my car. She said she doesn't too and to stop pressing it, lol. I had to run so many different scenarios in my head before I could give her an answer. In the parking lot she started feeling me up, talking dirty in my ear, anything she could to convince me to come home with her. I was lucky enough to think with my brain instead of my dick and turn down her offer. Needless to say, she was livid that I could turn her down. I quickly got back in my car and left before she could say anything else. I think my favorite part of the story was the text I got about 10 minutes after I left. You could have been balls deep in my pussy right now, and she sent me pictures of the most vile vagina I've seen in my life. I won. Ugh, I have one and I wish I didn't. So I talked to this guy for a while. I was still very new to online dating, and hadn't learned a few of the basic rules yet, like meeting for just coffee on the first date. Anyway, he seemed pretty normal when we spoke, and he told me he was also an accountant like me. He invited me out for dinner and a movie, and I thought sure, why not? So he picks me up from my place. Second no, that's a mistake I'll never make again. And I swear before we even leave my street I realize he's a bit weird, and I'm not really keen at all. Whatever, I'm here now, so may as well get dinner and sit through a movie. In the 20-minute drive there, he tells me about his job, which sounds absolutely nothing like accounting at all. Like he doesn't even know what an accountant is, his dating history, and his last girlfriend, who he had dated for 3 whole weeks, who was an alcoholic, still spoke to her ex and brought her kid along to their romantic weekend away. So for dinner, he takes me to the drive-thru of McDonald's. Not even the walk-in, the drive-thru. He then informs me the movie we are going to see is actually a movie marathon of the last 3 Fast and the Furious movies. Oh, and it's also at the drive-ins, fuck. At this point, I'm wondering how the hell I'm going to get out of this. So we drive from McDonald's to the drive-ins, which is only about 10 minutes away. Before we even get there, he's told me about how often he and his ex used to have sex, and asked me in my relationships how often I had it. Obviously, I told him I didn't want to talk about that stuff on a first date. I'm thinking get me the fuck out of here. The movie starts, and I'm practically leaning out of the window to stay as far away from him as I can. He puts his hand on my leg, and I push it off, and he says, "What? I'm not gonna finger you, babe." I'm seriously considering just making a run for it, but I had no way home, and I had just moved to my city, so I didn't know anyone to call to come and get me. After awkwardly sitting through 2 of the 3 movies, I tell him it's late, and I need to go home 'cause I have to work in the morning. I didn't, and he says no worries, he'll take me home. So on the most awful drive back to my house, he tells me he's had a great time, and asked me if I want to be his girlfriend. Thinking I better just say yes so he doesn't ditch me in the middle of nowhere, I say, "Yeah, maybe let's see how it goes." And he says cool, next time he'll take me to meet his mom and dad, then tells me about how his mom bought his ex of 3 weeks a really expensive diamond bracelet, and how she never gave it back when she left, and how much of a bitch she was to his mom. Finally, we pull up in my street, and I practically run out of the car saying thanks, talk to you later, bye, and bolt into my house. I immediately block him and remove him from Facebook and Tinder, mistake 3. Thinking thank God that's over. He messages me not even 15 minutes later asking why I blocked him. I try politely to say that he's way too full on, and I'm not interested, and he replies with a tirade of this is the third date this week that's gone wrong, and direct quote, "Fine, I guess I'll go fuck 17-year-olds. I'm never dating again." The kicker? He messages me on Facebook again a few months later with, "Hey babe, what's happening?" And when I reply with, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "What? We haven't even met, yet why are you being a bitch?" To which I tell him that in fact I had the distinct displeasure of being stuck in a car with him for over 6 hours, and to never message me again. Sorry it's long, but I'm really glad to get that off my chest. Ugh, I have one and I wish I didn't. So I talked to this guy for a while. I was still very new to online dating, and hadn't learned a few of the basic rules yet, like meeting for just coffee on the first date. Anyway, he seemed pretty normal when we spoke, and he told me he was also an accountant like me. He invited me out for dinner and a movie, and I thought sure, why not? So he picks me up from my place. Second no, that's a mistake I'll never make again. And I swear before we even leave my street I realize he's a bit weird, and I'm not really keen at all. Whatever, I'm here now, so may as well get dinner and sit through a movie. In the 20-minute drive there, he tells me about his job, which sounds absolutely nothing like accounting at all. Like he doesn't even know what an accountant is, his dating history, and his last girlfriend, who he had dated for 3 whole weeks, who was an alcoholic, still spoke to her ex and brought her kid along to their romantic weekend away. So for dinner, he takes me to the drive-thru of McDonald's. Not even the walk-in, the drive-thru. He then informs me the movie we are going to see is actually a movie marathon of the last 3 Fast and the Furious movies. Oh, and it's also at the drive-ins, fuck. At this point, I'm wondering how the hell I'm going to get out of this. So we drive from McDonald's to the drive-ins, which is only about 10 minutes away. Before we even get there, he's told me about how often he and his ex used to have sex, and asked me in my relationships how often I had it. Obviously, I told him I didn't want to talk about that stuff on a first date. I'm thinking get me the fuck out of here. The movie starts, and I'm practically leaning out of the window to stay as far away from him as I can. He puts his hand on my leg, and I push it off, and he says, "What? I'm not gonna finger you, babe." I'm seriously considering just making a run for it, but I had no way home, and I had just moved to my city, so I didn't know anyone to call to come and get me. After awkwardly sitting through 2 of the 3 movies, I tell him it's late, and I need to go home 'cause I have to work in the morning. I didn't, and he says no worries, he'll take me home. So on the most awful drive back to my house, he tells me he's had a great time, and asked me if I want to be his girlfriend. Thinking I better just say yes so he doesn't ditch me in the middle of nowhere, I say, "Yeah, maybe let's see how it goes." And he says cool, next time he'll take me to meet his mom and dad, then tells me about how his mom bought his ex of 3 weeks a really expensive diamond bracelet, and how she never gave it back when she left, and how much of a bitch she was to his mom. Finally, we pull up in my street, and I practically run out of the car saying thanks, talk to you later, bye, and bolt into my house. I immediately block him and remove him from Facebook and Tinder, mistake 3. Thinking thank God that's over. He messages me not even 15 minutes later asking why I blocked him. I try politely to say that he's way too full on, and I'm not interested, and he replies with a tirade of this is the third date this week that's gone wrong, and direct quote, "Fine, I guess I'll go fuck 17-year-olds. I'm never dating again." The kicker? He messages me on Facebook again a few months later with, "Hey babe, what's happening?" And when I reply with, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "What? We haven't even met, yet why are you being a bitch?" To which I tell him that in fact I had the distinct displeasure of being stuck in a car with him for over 6 hours, and to never message me again. Sorry it's long, but I'm really glad to get that off my chest. First week on Tinder, and I matched with this dime. And when I say dime, I mean her Tinder pictures could make grown men cry. Let's call her Molly. Molly and I texted for about 2 to 3 weeks. We'd talk about random stuff, flirt with each other, but never anything sexual. During that time we also texted about trying to hang out, but were unable to do so due to our extremely different schedules. Usually after a couple times of trying to coordinate plans with someone new with no results, I would normally just give up and stop trying to force it, because it's just not meant to be, as cheesy as that sounds. But for this girl, I would have eaten Skittles out of her asshole. And she was a pretty good conversationalist via text messages, too. Anyways, after about 3 weeks we both have a Friday night available, for which I told her I'd take her out for dinner and drinks, so that we could finally meet in person and get to know each other. I chose this new bar/restaurant that opened up downtown that's pretty chill and has some bomb-ass craft beer and food. She told me she loves craft beer. Worked out pretty nicely too, since we lived about half an hour from each other and downtown was right between us. So earlier that evening I do my pre-date routine. Workout, sauna, steam room, shave, shower. I then head downtown full of excitement like a fat kid at a cake buffet. When I got there I texted her and went inside. I looked around for her when I felt my phone vibrate from her replying that she will be there in 5 minutes. So I sat down at the bar, ordered a beer and waited. About 5 minutes later, I am drinking my beer and scrolling through Instagram on my phone when I feel a tap on my right shoulder. I eagerly turn my head around to see a girl who looked like her favorite class in high school was lunch. This girl is about 5 feet 11 inches and 260 pounds. I am 6'5" and 215 for reference. Hi, I'm Molly. It's nice to finally meet you. She sticks her hand out as if to shake mine, and I reflexively stick my hand out and we shake hands, and she then proceeds to sit down next to me. At this point, I'm more confused than a chameleon in a bag of Skittles. Those next 10-ish seconds were the longest in my life. I looked at her, and my brain could recognize her mouth moving, but I could not hear anything she was saying over the deafening white noise of my shock. Next thing I know, I blurt out, "What the fuck," in a calm but stern manner. To make a long story short, over the next 10 minutes, she told me that she was sorry, and she thought guys wouldn't swipe right on her if they saw real pictures, but the conversations we had were all her. She said once I'd get to know her, I'd see that she was really fun. I calmly made it clear to her I thought what she did was not cool, and I was intensely disappointed. In the end, I decided our text conversations were pretty entertaining, and I also feel kinda bad for this girl, and I didn't want to be an asshole and leave her right there. So I chose to make the best out of a shitty situation and let it go. We ate, we drank, we laughed. At the end of the night, we walked back to our cars and I told her the whole "I had fun, have a good night, drive safe" kind of thing. She told me she had some good wine back at her place. At some point during the night I told her that I never really drank wine, but was just getting into it over the past month or so. I respectfully declined and made some excuse about having to go to the farmer's market with my sister in the morning. That night, and every damn night since then, she has been sending me naked pictures on Snapchat. They are terrifying, but for some reason I can't stop opening them. Does OkCupid count? Here's an excerpt from my first OKC date. Well, so, it's weird, you know. You talk to someone for a minute. She seems cool, nothing special but cool enough. She looks cute from her pics. You think, well, why not? The fuck am I doing on here if not going out with the PPL who I meet? So you ask her out. She's super into it. Feels good. She stresses that she just wants to chill. I say Monday's the earliest I can do it. She says great, that'll be real chill. You talk a little less as the days go by, tension building. You start to talk specifics of what to do and where to go. She explains she doesn't drive. I mean, yeah, okay, that's not a problem, I guess. I'll pick you up. But naturally she doesn't want to give a random dude her address. Totally understand. She gives a random street corner to pick her up on. Yeah, okay, I get it. Being a gentleman, I say that I'd hate for her to wait in the cold. Let me get there, then I'll text you. You slap on the clothes you own that seem the most decently presentable. Flex in the mirror a couple times. Clean the fuck out of your car and head out. You park at the corner. Text her. Then flip through Spotify to be sure your next few songs aren't too hardcore. You see her walking up, and yeah, cool, she looks like her pic. Super petite, hair's different, not better but different. Get out of the car to greet her. Say some joke about it being too cold to be waking. Say hi and sorta reintroduce yourselves for real this time. Fuck it, let's hug. Whoa, that was an awkward hug. Sorry I'm so awkward. Oh, it's okay, I'm kinda nervous too. Get back in the car. Heat's on full blast since she just walked in the cold. Sit there for a second trying to talk, but she won't look at you, just out the window. She's talking and you're getting some laughs, but she won't look at you. Okay, let's head to the movies. Turns out she's a shift manager at Noodles and Company. Oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. How's that? Oh, you don't like it? You've been there 3 years? Oh, you flunked out of school? Oh, well, okay, cool. Let's go to the movie. Oh, you're extremely particular about where we sit. That's kinda cool, I like movies too. It's great to get real into the... What are you doing? Oh, you like to try out different seats before picking one? Cool, yeah, you're super dedicated to the experience. Watch movie. Something smells funny, but cigarettes have dulled my senses. Also, I can't pinpoint what the smell actually is. Already over whatever this is. Leave movie. Well, that was fun. It's so cold out, and that movie kinda drained me. Still wanna get food? You do? Okay, let's go. Oh, you're super particular about food? No Mexican, okay, no problem. Oh, no Asian either? Okay, well, we're passing Carytown. How about the Portrait House? Never been. Okay, I remember it being cool. Get inside. Totally empty. Sit down. The menus are different and say the Nile in huge letters. Flip through the menu. Seems weird, but just decide on something with beef in it and start looking at the beer menu. Notice she is frantically searching the menu. Yeah, the menu is different than when I last came. You able to find anything you like? No. Why not? Oh, no spicy food. Oh, like no spicy whatsoever, eh? Okay, well, let's ask the waiter. Hey, how are you? What's your least spicy item? Ugh. The Portrait House has new owners? And it's all Ethiopian food now. Cool, that's interesting. Oh, all Ethiopian food is spicy? Interesting. Okay, we'll need some more time. Still not looking at me. Not even looking at the menu. Just looking down and pouting. Hey, I remember from your profile, you really like French fries. New York Deli across the street has really good fries. Wanna go there? Silence. Yeah. Okay, it's alright. Let's go. Get to deli. Totally empty. Sit at table. She starts acting weird. Hey, you okay? It's just, I work in hospitality, and there's no one here, but those 2 tables over there are still dirty. It's ridiculous. Oh yeah, totally. I worked in a restaurant, and it's just they shouldn't do that. I have 5 roommates, and I get mad when they leave dirty silverware in the sink. Oh wow, 5 roommates? That's cool, always have someone to hang out with, I guess. Make decent casual conversation as she scans the menu frantically. I don't even look at it. Waiter comes over, and I order a beer and an Italian sub. She gets a Sprite, then explains in awkward detail how she wants her well-done burger with only lettuce and cheese to be. Great, I'm glad you found something you like. Make more conversation. I'm keeping her talking. At this point, I don't even know why I'm bothering. Beer comes. I can't drink beer or wine. Oh really, that sucks, yeah, they just taste like fermentation. Really? What does fermentation taste like? And wine is just rotten grapes. Huh, I hadn't thought of it like that, but that's a valid point. Internally, my eyes are rolling around like they're in a washing machine. It's just, I don't get acquired tastes, like why would you force yourself to like something that isn't good? Not wanting to start some kind of debate that I'd get out of hand on. Totally. I just like beer from the get-go, so I don't know why PPL force it on themselves. Food comes. I eat a fry. She picks one up. Looks at it. Takes her glasses off. Looks more. Brushes the salt and pepper of it. Takes a bite. They're okay. Good, glad we found some food that works for you. Stares at her burger. Picks it up. Pulls a piece of bread off that has a tiny burn in it. Since we just left that other place, I'm gonna pretend that's a char mark and not mold. Well, I mean, it's totally from the burger. That spot was right under the meat. Maybe. She takes a bite. Chews, ponders, swallows. Too salty. Take a huge gulp of beer. Ask her about her family. She talks about her dad a lot. Ask her what her dad does. She dodges the question. She talks about her cats a bunch. 2 cats. They stay in her room. Don't you have 5 roommates? Yeah, but me and my babies stay in my room away from everyone. Cool. Silence. Don't even care. She sniffs the air. I just gotta say, something in here smells like cat piss, and I would know. Oh, it does. Is that what I was smelling? Is it constant or like when the waiter comes by? Constant. That's weird. Let me get the check. Check, please. Yeah, 2 boxes. It's cool, whatever, just run the card. Here. Go. Drive back listening to the horrors of working with noodles. Definite cat piss smell filling the car. Park at her place and chuckle, wondering how she'll handle this. She immediately opens the door, but sits there looking at the ground. Exchange pleasantries. Ask her about the movie and food. She's very thankful to either me, or maybe the ground, I can't tell. She says she'll text me with other thoughts on the movie, and maybe we can do this again sometime. Cool. She gets out and shuts the door. Literally out of sheer instinct, drive away extremely quickly. Realizing now that probably was obvious. Go grab beer and cigarettes. Smoke and drink one down outside your apartment while laughing at the sordid state of affairs you find yourself in. Phew, it was good to get that out. Well, I showed up to a restaurant I had made a reservation for. Neutral place is always good. It's 15 minutes past the time we're supposed to meet. Damn. Must have flaked out on me. I had already set aside calories and planned on having a nice meal, so I went and ordered for myself. Waitress was chatting me up a bit since I was alone, and I assumed that she felt bad for me. Thought I was stood up, told her about the online thing. Get a text that she's running late and will be there in 15. This is already after being 30 minutes late. Okay. Sure, why not? I tell her I'm already inside seated waiting. I'm snacking on some of those red and green tortilla chip thingies and doing the word search on the kids' menu with a red crayon favorite color, when a woman approaches and greets me by my name. I look up, confused, smiling, but confused and caught off guard. I respond with a hello and a short pause. You are, OH. Then it dawned on me. This whale-ish monstrosity that looks nothing like the photos on her profile is my date. I'm a tactful person and tend to be respectful of people, but this was blatant. I didn't recognize you. You look much different than your photos. She played it off like it was nothing. Said those were older photos. I told her she was welcome to join me for the meal. After a little bit of intro, I asked her to run me through her train of thought of how she thought tonight would go down. What exactly are you expecting to happen tonight? You already started off on a bad note with lying about your looks, and you're extremely late. Never have I seen a smile turn to a scowl as fast as when I said that. I was legitimately curious. Seriously, what are people thinking will happen when they lie about how they look? Physical attraction is a significant factor, and we can all argue about being shallow or an asshole all we want, but the truth is we all factor in looks at least a little bit. She became loud, rowdy, called me things and then left. I stayed and finished my guacamole spicy burger and word search. Why was antelope so hard for me to find? I never did get an answer out of her. I did, however, learn that the waitress had a boyfriend. Oh well, that's my worst experience. Could be a lot worse. I've had women that I met up with who didn't really have body photos, only faces. I've gambled and lost a few times. What's the worst that can happen? I suppose I could end up in a bathtub, unconscious, and having my organs harvested for the black market. That's pretty bad. Talked to a girl for a bit with a lot of cute pics. She liked me, and I seemed to like her, so we met up. Juice place, really healthy stuff and hipster vibe, cool place to meet. We stayed for an hour and really got along well. I wore way too much cologne like a dork, so we both made fun of that and had a good ice-breaking laugh. After an hour of chit-chat, we're clicking, so we take off and walk around. She takes me to rent a hot tub place, which I didn't even know existed. I didn't have a bathing suit with me, so I just stripped to my underwear, and so did she. She was petite and had an amazing body. I was wearing athletic underwear which, if you don't know, will hug every contour when wet. So we get in and chill for what seems like an hour, kind of get close and touchy. Someone else comes in. We were in the public one, which is bigger. So we decide to leave. I get up and of course had a raging erection, so I and the woman who was about to get in are all looking at it. Then we all kind of bust out laughing. It was hilarious. She looks at me and says, maybe we should take him home. Kaching. We got back to my place and crashed in my room, had 2 roommates. On my bed, which was my first big purchase after college. Super comfy with a huge comforter that I absolutely loved. We round the bases 3 times and she stays the whole weekend. All we did was Netflix and bang. It was incredible, still some of the best sex I've ever had. Drove her home Monday morning early, so she could get to work. We text back and forth and meet up the next weekend. She wants to bring her friend along, which I'm totally cool with. I drive, she doesn't, so I met her at a city bar and spot her in a sexy dress with her friend. Her friend comes up to me and says she's already had a lot to drink. I'm cool with that, so I start catching up. Meanwhile, she's been slamming red wine all night. She's very charismatic and hot, so she's talking to all of these older guys and getting them to buy her more red wines, which are coming almost as fast as she's putting them down. Randomly, we meet another girl at the bar who is backpacking across the US from Germany. Odd. Then one of the older guys starts talking to our new friend, and they get all makey-outy in the bar. So it's now 2 a.m., and I let loose that I have a hookah and a back porch like a dummy. Everyone starts saying, let's go to your place. And drunk me is like, yeah, my roommates will love that. So I slam some waters as hard as I can and sober up in the next hour or so, and off we go. Me driving the 5 of us, my girl in the passenger seat, her friend, the German drifter, and some old guy in the back seat, already making out. About halfway to my place, I'm hearing a lot of giggling and seeing lots of skin in my rear view. Cool, I guess. Her friend even seems to not mind. The whole way, my date seems to be coming to some strange terms in her head and starts grabbing the wheel and jerking hard. She's petite. I'm a medium to big guy, but she is getting some demon strength into these jerks. So right away I'm like, WTF. And of course they're all laughing in the back. Then out of nowhere she leaps over the center console and lands in my lap, fully blocking my view of the road, straddling me and starts making out with me, her foot jammed on mine on the gas pedal. Now it starts to click that this may not have been a great idea. So in an effort to regain control of my car, I launch her as gently as I can back into the passenger seat and tell her to stay. Meanwhile, clothes are flying and laughs from the back tell me a pseudo-threesome is taking place back there. I don't know how I wasn't pulled over. Then my date starts moaning and making very strange twitchy motions with her eyes closed, and seems to be writhing. Now I'm very freaked with the circumstances and yell to her friend, to which she responds, "She's just having a seizure, she gets those sometimes." WTF. We finally get to my place, and at this point I'm ready to call it a night. We burst into my place, and they're making a ton of noise. First things first, I put my date in my bed on her side, turn the lights out, planning to check on her frequently. She's asleep before she is the pillow. The drifter and old guy are on my porch already lighting up and making out again, so me and the friend go join them. Now I want to sleep, but I'm not about to just let three strangers have the run of the place, but I'm also too polite to say GTFO. So I hang and smoke hookah, and at every chance try to get them to leave. No deal. Hours go by until I finally call them a taxi, and it shows up at 5:30 a.m. My roommates get up for work and are very angry as I'm shuffling these PPL out of the front door. Date's friend asleep on the couch, date in my bed, place a complete wreck. I finally lie down on the couch. It should be said that I actually did check on my date each hour to make sure she was okay, which she was. I wake up 2 hours later, roommate's gone to work. Her friend is shaking me, saying something I can't really understand, because sleep. I see her motion to my room, which gets me up fast, and I hurriedly go into my room, fearing the worst. Luckily there my date is in my t-shirt and gym shorts, and there is all of the red wine she drank the night before pooled on my bed and seeping into the comforter. I have never seen so much vomit, and I've worked 300 plus PPL whale watches as a deckhand. She starts apologizing profusely and asks how she can make it up to me, maybe anal. I still regret not taking her up on that, but at that point I was just glad she wasn't dead and wanted them out of my house. I drove them home, let her keep the clothes, and went back to start the cleanup. $400 comforter and a huge stain later, plus 6 hours of cleaning the place and 3 days of airing and cleaning my mattress later with some insane memories. My roommates were not happy, but forgave me when they saw the love of my life, my bed, tarnished the way it was. There was this girl that seemed really cool, and she invited me to go swing dancing with her. I told her that I'd never gone swing dancing before, and though I'd eventually like to try it, I was way too nervous/uncomfortable to do that for a first date. I at least need to woo you with my wit and charm, so you're on my side when I inevitably embarrass myself on the dance floor. Well, somehow she convinced me to be adventurous enough to accept. Besides, how hard could it be? I play music, so I have rhythm, and there's a lesson an hour before the dance starts. So I agree to meet her on the day of the dance at 7 p.m. for the lesson/warm-up and dance. Then we plan to go get dinner. I drive the hour and a half to where the dance is and show up at 6:55 p.m., overcoming my habit of being late everywhere I go. I don't see her outside, and after poking my head inside and still not seeing her, I decide to give her a call. Turns out she and her sister are still getting ready, and their ride is running late, so they'll be there at 8 o'clock. I was a little stunned by how offhandedly she mentions that she'll be an hour late, but doesn't tell me until I get there and call her myself. I seriously considered leaving, because I was so terrified of dancing. I only agreed to come because she assured me that she would be there to make me feel comfortable, and I trusted her. But I decided to be a bigger person and go inside, learn from the lesson, and impress her with my newly found swing skills when she arrives for the dance. Turns out dancing can be difficult, even for musicians. Thankfully I got to practice with several kind, helpful partners, and I finally got the basics down pretty well by the time 8 p.m. rolled around. The lights dimmed, people paired off, and the dance began. I looked all around and couldn't find my date. Let's call her Lisa, okay? So I went and sat down where I could see the door, figuring she would be here any minute, and pulled out my phone for entertainment. I texted Lisa to let her know exactly where I was sitting, so she wouldn't have any trouble finding me. I am a pretty patient person, and I had struck up a fine text conversation with a friend who lives in the area, so I wasn't bothered by the time passing. Eventually it got to be 8:45, and I was beginning to become frustrated that Lisa was 45 minutes late after already being an hour late. I texted her, asking if she had any trouble or if she was still coming. No response. I then texted my friend in the area to verify that I wasn't being unreasonable by getting frustrated. He said most people would probably have left by that point. I gave her until 9:15 p.m. before I left. I looked around for her one last time, then called up my friend to go get a burger, so my trip wouldn't be a complete waste. I was very confused, and a whirlwind of possibilities went through my head. Was something wrong? Is she safe? Did I say something to make her go radio silent on me like that? Was she playing a game, having me drive 90 minutes with no intention to meet me? Was she even real? I was really digging for an answer. After a 15-minute drive, I pick up my friend, and we sit down at a fast food restaurant to eat. At this point it's about 9:30 p.m., and I get a text message from Lisa. She seems annoyed by my asking where she was, and she says that she's been there since 8:15 p.m. It turns out she got to the dance, and didn't see me immediately, so she put her stuff down and danced with a random partner. Someone must have blocked my view of the door when she walked in. No explanation for the fact that I told her exactly where I was sitting. I was flabbergasted and again asked my friend to verify my sanity. We are both of the opinion that it's typically the second person who arrives that should make an effort to find the first person, especially when they have been told where to find them. But she literally came in, didn't see me immediately, and thus forgot all about me, dancing with strangers. I couldn't believe I'd wasted the gas, the day, and the 2 hours waiting for a date that wouldn't happen. As I continued my meal with my friend, I tried to ask Lisa why she didn't check where I had told her I would be, but I got no response. After having a fun time with my friend, I begin to drive home and, around midnight, get a text from Lisa. So I pulled over at a gas station and read it. Turns out that her ex-boyfriend showed up to the dance, so she had been sitting outside talking with him. And great news, she says. They're working out their problems and getting back together. Now I'm not a spiteful person, so I'm happy that she sees this as a good thing, and I would never try to come between them if that is what she wants. But I was so shocked at the fact that she never once apologized for essentially ditching me at this dance that she knew I was nervous about and having me drive 3 hours round trip for nothing. So I wished her the best of luck and finished driving home. It was weird, it was recent, and I'm still processing it all. It's kinda got me nervous about using Tinder in the future. TLDR, invited to a dance. She shows up, but doesn't even acknowledge me and dances with others. I leave, thinking I've been stood up. She later meets up with her ex and rekindles their relationship. Basically tells me to fuck off, because she's happy with him. At least I had a really good burger with a friend, so the trip wasn't a waste. We met up from Tinder to get some ice cream at a mom and pop ice cream parlor that was walking distance from her apartment. The date was okay. A little awkward. I'm a pretty outgoing guy, especially on dates, but she was really quiet and didn't laugh at any of my stories or jokes. Maybe they didn't land, or maybe she just didn't find me funny, which is fine, my humor isn't for everyone. But she was just standoffish immediately. Her behavior reminded me of meeting up with a girlfriend that was trying to decide how to break up with you throughout the date. She didn't show any typical uninterested behavior, sighs, eye-rolling, texting during date, etc. She wasn't like this over text at all. Her texts were full of smiley faces, flirty, and she even sent me genuinely funny Snapchats. She also didn't look as good as her pictures or Snapchats. I wasn't catfished, necessarily, because you can tell that this girl was the same person in her pictures, but everything was just kinda off physically. It was almost as if she was that two-faced girl from that episode of Seinfeld, and she was just in that terrible lighting the entire date, best way I could explain it. Wasn't the lighting's fault, she just looked off. When the date was over, I was planning on walking to her car, hugging her goodnight, and then just never talking to her again. But when I asked her where her car was parked, she said she had walked to the shop from her apartment. This set off red flags immediately, because she was the one who set up the location of the date. She picked where we were supposed to meet up. She asked for my crossroads and told me that she'd pick a location halfway between us. I live 15 miles from the location, so she purposely chose something really out of the way for me, so that she could walk to the date. This felt really weird to me, but I assumed maybe she got the crossroads wrong and just gave her a hug and said goodbye. As I was leaving, she followed behind me and asked me to walk her home since she didn't live far and was afraid of the dark. I wanted to say no, but it was dark out and I didn't see much light where she'd be walking, so I just clutched my pepper spray in my pocket close and prepared for the worst. We made awkward small talk on the short walk there and hugged her goodbye again, where she walked into the complex and disappeared. I drove home and got a text from her that read, "Hey, sorry about tonight. I know it wasn't what you expected, and I just wanted to say sorry for acting so weird all night." Apparently, the reason why she was so strange was because she was scared of me the whole night. Her last Tinder date had sexually assaulted her, and she was really nervous the entire date that I was going to hurt her. She thought she was emotionally ready the day leading up to the date, so she didn't cancel. When she realized that nothing bad was going to happen, she asked me to walk her to her car, which was parked at a nearby apartment complex. Because she was scared of the dark, she parked there because she wanted me to think she lived close by in case I tried following her home or something, where she waited until she watched me walk away. I understood and felt bad for her, but decided to still not continue seeing her. I recently had a date that I thought was the best of my life end up being the worst of my life. Met a girl on OkCupid. We start talking on a Sunday. We chat a bit, exchanging messages on the site. We're both very nerdy and love games. She plays MMOs and GMs D&D and does Friday night magic. Fucking perfect. And she doesn't look too bad. In fact, she's probably the most attractive girl that has ever talked to me on that site. She gives me her phone number and we text for an hour about more nerdy shit. Then she informs me that her phone is dying and she doesn't have her charger and that her phone plan runs out that night. So she gives me her Facebook and says she can get Wi-Fi on her phone still and talk to me there. We spend about 7 hours chatting on Facebook until 4 a.m. Since it was Sunday, I took about an hour break to watch True Blood. She apparently likes True Blood, says she's Sookie in real life. Why are you Sookie? Because I'm sort of telepathic and I can read people and feel their emotions and thoughts. Ahu. Red flag 1. She asks if she can come over and watch True Blood with me. My roommates, friends, and I had just spent the entire weekend having a LAN party. My 2 roommates and I were still set up in the living room for the LAN, and none of us had felt like being productive members of society that day, so none of us had showered. I tell her this thinking she probably would not want to hang with a bunch of smelly dudes. I have an acquired taste for nerd funk. In fact, I cannot take a shower, so I'll fit in with y'all. Red flag 2. I tell her I'm not really comfortable with that. I mean, we had just started talking that day and never met. So I go watch the show, then we chat more for the rest of the night. In our chats, she seemed really excited and a bit obsessed about the fact that if she came over to hang out with me and my roommates, she was going to make them jealous of me. Red flag 3. When I come over all tits and ass and covered in tattoos and 110 pounds size 0 and all suicide girled out, they're going to get so jealous it will be fun. My roommates and I homebrew beer and mead, and we drink a lot of craft beer. We're beer snobs. I ask if she drinks, and she says that she used to, but doesn't anymore. She only drinks at home, never with a group of males, and only when she can watch her beer, and never take her eyes off it after the factory seal has been broken. Then she says she thinks she can talk to her therapist, red flag 4, and be able to drink if she hangs out with me, because it sounds like fun to her. At this point, she also makes some comment about having PTSD. Red flag 5. I got the impression that she had been raped in the past from someone spiking her drink, but I never asked her about it and moved on. Doesn't matter to me if that did happen to her or not. It's not something I'd ever even think of doing, and I'll never treat a gal like she's damaged goods or something because of her past. She then makes a comment about drinking homebrew, making her nervous. That's fine. You don't have to drink. My friends and I have abstained from alcohol in the past when having someone over who has serious problems with it. Then out of nowhere, she accuses me of being an angry, alcoholic drunk who might hit her. Since her ex-husband started out 2 beers a night and then beat her, and her alcoholic mother abused her. Red flags 6, 7, and 8. Somehow during our conversation about her wanting to make my roommates and friends jealous about her, she makes the comment, "I wreck guys, I've done porn." Red flag 9. Proceeds to tell me all about how she models for some like Suicide Girls website. She did 3 scenes for Naughty America that were never released because I had a good lawyer and they broke contract, so I had them all taken down so no one has ever seen them. Oh, and I fucking love anal. Well, that's nice, but that's not something you say to someone the first time you're chatting with them and haven't even met with yet. Red flag 10. At this point, I was halfway convinced this person was a troll and couldn't be real. The next day, she chats with me on Facebook more throughout the day while I'm at the office for work. She starts talking to me about drugs. She kind of hinted that she had tried a lot of things, then tells me that I never do any of the hard stuff, just weed and shrooms for me. Red flag 11. I share my opinion on drugs, mainly that I don't do them ever, but that I don't have that much of a problem with people who do, and many of my friends have tried things in the past. I've even been a trip sitter on occasion. She thinks that hanging out with those kinds of people is really dumb, and she thinks less of me for that. But it's perfectly fine that she's tried heroin, meth, cocaine, acid, and regularly does shrooms and smokes weed. Red flag 12. She tells me that she has a list of things the next guy she dates must have or do, which includes smoke weed every day. She claims she will peer pressure me into it with research studies that only she has access to. Red flag 13. We argue a bit about why she thinks I need to do drugs, why it's okay for her to have tried things but not my friends, and she ends up going into some freak-out mode where she claims she's having terrible anxiety and I need to stop talking to her right now. Red flag 14. A few hours later she starts talking to me again, says that the things we were talking about were triggering her PTSD and making her anxious, but she's cool now and wants to chat more. Informs me that she really likes me and that up until our disagreement on illicit substances and the way that her anxiety attack changed my impression of you and the way I think of you, that she would have let me wear her like a hat. Red flag 15. We continue to chat. She seems to have gotten over whatever was going on with her and says she doesn't want to sound clingy, but she just has to see me right now / that day. She wants to bring a late lunch to my work at around 4 p.m. Hell no. Red flag 16. Eventually I agreed to do something with her and meet her that night. I was really wanting to go see Guardians of the Galaxy, so I asked if she wanted to go see that. She did, so I bought tickets for a 9:30 p.m. showtime. She wants to meet me at 7 p.m. so I can get to know you. We won't be talking and learning about each other during the movie. She wants me to meet her at 7 sharp at the mall in a nerdy / geeky toy shop kind of place. I get there, am completely surprised that she looks just like her pics. She's a little nerdy pixie dream girl with a lot of tattoos. She was talking with the only employee at the store when I walked in, turns her back on him mid-sentence to greet me, and starts walking around the store looking at stuff with me. She complains that the guy working there had been hitting on her, and she was so glad I showed up on time. Apparently people hit on her all the time in public. Red flag 17. We look at everything in the store. She's possibly even more nerdy than I am, and a total fangirl for everything. She also asks repeatedly if I will buy little things for her in the shop. Red flag 18. We start walking around the mall. Almost instantly she starts putting her arm around mine, leaning on me, hanging on my shoulder, holding my hand. This was a bit strange to me since we'd just met, but whatever, she's cute and she's affectionate and normally gals don't treat me like that. We go to a bunch of girly / hippie type of stores and popular places. She's constantly asking if I will buy this so adorable / so cute / awesome thing that she wants in every store. Red flag 19. In one store she strikes up a conversation with the gal working behind the cash register and ends up exchanging numbers with her because she's new to the area and wanting to meet new friends. During this exchange she calls me her boyfriend and hugs me. Weird. Red flag 20. In one store one of the girls working there walks by and asks if we need any help. We tell her we're fine and just looking, then we immediately leave. Once we're out of the store, she tells me she almost decked that employee because when she came up to ask if we needed help, the girl had given us a look. It was like she felt sorry for me and was saying, "Sorry honey, I wish you didn't have to be with that guy." WTF? I would have hit her, but I don't need another assault charge. Red flag 21. We still have a good hour and a half until the movie starts, so she suggests we get in her car and drive to her favorite spot. Her car is filthy and covered in trash on the inside. It was honestly as if someone had been living in the car. Red flag 22. We drive to a nearby lake. On the way there she points out a neighborhood of houses and says, "That's where I live." Before we had met up that night I had asked what part of town she lived in to figure out which theater we should go to, ask if she wanted me to pick her up or meet her there, etc. She had told me she lived in an apartment complex on the opposite side of the lake from where she pointed out the houses she lived in. Red flag 23. Her spot at the lake was a small park. We sat on a bench, held hands, and talked for a long time. While there she tells me about how she was the innocent, designated driver, techie girl who didn't do anything at parties and was bilingual. Somehow that made her a prime candidate for some guy to woo in order to recruit her to do tech work for the MS-13 gang. She showed me a small infinity symbol tattoo on her foot and claimed it was a MS-13 property mark. She claimed she had not even known what she was doing for 4 years before she got out of that life. Red flag 24. She told me her father was Irish and her mother was half Persian and half black. Somehow this made her Hispanic. She claimed she grew up in Cali and Spanish was her first language, and the only reason she looked white right now was that she hadn't been working the fields and getting a tan. Red flag 25. She told me what college her mother worked at, so later I googled and found a pic of her mom. White as white can be. Red flag 26. She told me she had not spoken to her parents in over 5 years. 30 minutes later, she tells me that she went to see them just a few weeks ago to hang out with her dog that lives with them and visit. Red flag 27. We go to a Target and walk around looking at stuff to kill time. She asks me if I will buy her more random shit at the store. On the way back to the mall, she makes several comments about how she really likes me, and she thinks I'm adorable and cute and the perfect guy for her. I'm her ideal guy, etc. She says, "You are so adorable. I want to hug you / I want to kiss your face / I want to fuck you," repeatedly. This was all surprising to me, but whatever. Chick maybe wants to bang me and is showering me with affection. I'll roll with it. We go to the movie, share a drink, talk a lot more since we were 30 minutes early, and there was no one in the theater but a couple in the back row and us sitting in the front row. At this point, she pulls her pants and her panties down to show me a tattoo she really wanted me to see that was way below her panty line. Who does that on a first date? Red flag 28. We spend the entire movie holding hands, her placing my hand really far up her thigh repeatedly, her leaning on me the entire time, and randomly biting my hand or my shoulder in a playful way. Movie was pretty fucking great BTW. We both nerded out and loved it. I made the smart move of parking my car next to the theater. Her car was parked on the opposite side of the mall. After the movie, I offered to drive her back to her car. Sorry, no, I never get in anyone else's car. But I'd love it if you'd walk me back to my car, and then I can drive you to yours. We walked through the mall at about midnight, completely deserted, holding hands the entire time and talking about random things. At one point she mentions that while she was still with the gang, she was forced to shoot a man. Few hours before she had told me she had never held a gun before. Red flag 29. While we're walking to her car, she starts telling me stories about how she used to be really big into shoplifting at this mall and all over the city with an old ex of hers, and that they would steal everything. Red flag 30. She drives me back to my car, tells me she had an incredible time, but she needs to go to the other side of the city now to do her laundry at a friend's place since her apartment doesn't have a dryer or washer. It's about 12:15 at night. Red flag 31. I give her a hug goodnight. She turns it into a kiss, then tells me, "Now get the hell out of my car," and giggles. Best date ever? If a bit weird. Turns out to be worst date ever. The aftermath. Later that night, about 1:30 a.m., she messages me online to say that she needs my help because someone doozed her PC. She claims her ex-husband is a member of Kirasek or some 4chan hacker group or something, and he's done this, but she needs my help to prove it so she can call the cops on him. Oh, and her bank account has been drained. Red flag 32. But she thinks the bank account has nothing to do with her ex. She thinks that's her dad. She has a joint bank account with her father, and she thinks that he drained it of money in retaliation because she won't release her mental health records to him. Red flag 33. I tell her I can't help her. A few minutes later, she says she has it taken care of and will be pressing charges on her ex. The next day, she chats with me online more. I had gone into the night before not thinking it was a date, but then she turned it into one and confirmed it was indeed a date. She said she had an incredible time and she loved my personality and couldn't wait to do more stuff with me. More dates. Come over for my group's RPG day. Come over for my group's board game / card game night. Come over to watch series like GOT and True Blood, hang out, etc. She also makes a lot of comments about how she cares about hearts, not parts, and thinks I am so attractive and hot. We talk on and off throughout the day until she goes to see her therapist in the afternoon, and then she had plans with other friends that night. The next morning I log onto OkCupid and notice her account has been deleted. She messages me after a while to give me her new phone number. Asks some innocent things like, "What are you up to?" "I'm going to lunch." "Me too." "What are you having for lunch?" "I don't know yet. What about you?" She takes a while to respond, then says, "We just had Taco Bell." I have to tell you I met someone last night. I'm seeing them now. We can't go on any more dates. She apparently met a guy that night who she had not seen nor spoken to since high school 5 years ago. It sounded as if she had a crush on him in high school, when she weighed 240 pounds, and he wouldn't give her the time of day, but now that she weighs 100 pounds, he's interested. In a single night they go from, "Oh hey old high school friend, I haven't even spoken to in 5 years," to "we're official." She spent the night at his place, probably fucked him, after telling me repeatedly that she had a rule of, "If I sleep with you within the first 3 dates, I'll be bored of you within 3 weeks. Red flag hashtag, I don't even know anymore. We barely talked the rest of the day. Next day I find out that she's moving in with the guy, after a single day of knowing him / going out with him. And this is after she had told me that she had her apartment paid for like 6 months in advance. She also said contradictory things about having roommates at her apartment. First she had a girl roommate. Then it was a guy roommate who she had permanently friend-zoned. Then it was 3 different roommates. Then it was, "I hardly ever stay at my apartment because MS-13 will come to kill me and my family someday, so I never stay in the same place every night." Pretty much every single day that I had been talking to her, she had crashed at a friend's house and slept in her clothes that night, since she posted pics about it on Facebook the next morning every day. At this point I was ready to heed the advice of my friends and delete her Facebook, delete her number, and never speak to her again. I told her so and asked if there was any reason why I shouldn't after the way she had treated me. She maintained that she had done nothing wrong. We argue a bit, she deletes me from Facebook. Later that day I get a million text messages from her, and she tries to call my cell while I'm at work. She claims that 2 messages I sent her on Facebook and 3 texts I sent her, all basically saying I have no idea why you treated me this way or did this to me. I'm confused, I don't understand. I'm done talking to you unless you want to talk to me again and have a good explanation. Or harassment. She claims she is going to her lawyer in less than an hour to file VOPS for harassment on me and 3 other guys she had been talking to / seeing who flipped shit when I got with someone other than them. She then says she's going to also file charges against me for slander because she did nothing wrong to me at all, and I obviously must have told lies about her to my friends in order for them to suggest I delete her crazy ass on FB and her number. She says I have exactly 1 hour to provide proof that she did anything with malicious intent towards me, or she's filing these charges. Red flag, what the fuck? Consensus of my friends and I is that this girl was most likely homeless, a compulsive liar, was desperately looking to get laid and find a guy to take her in and take care of her, and was on a lot of drugs. They also said I don't have any game, otherwise I would have slept with her on the date night, but silver lining, I avoided sticking my dick in crazy. I went on a roller coaster of a date with a French guy in Paris. It was summer, and we were meeting on the steps of Sacré-Cœur. We arrived and he brought red wine, and I made a comment jokingly saying, "Oh, you got red in summer." And he responded with, "Oh, I guess I'm a piece of shit for getting the wrong wine," which immediately made me think I have made a dire mistake. I reassured him and told him I was just teasing, but that was red flag number 1. During our convo, he kept complimenting me incessantly, like to the point where it's uncomfortable. After like 10 compliments, you don't even know what to say anymore. Like at one point I was telling him a story, and he kept interrupting me to say, "Your eyes are so beautiful I can't stop staring at them." And I was like, "Thank you, that is so nice. Okay, back to my story." Like it was non-stop. At one point after the 19th compliment, and my gracious thanks, I heard him mumble in French. "And I'm waiting for you to say the same to me." And I was like, "What was what?" And he goes, "Oh, nothing." He didn't think I spoke French, but I am fluent. So that was uncomfortable, shoving compliments at me and pouting when I didn't give him one back. Like, "Sir, if I wanted to compliment you, I would. I love complimenting people." But I wasn't overly attracted to him, and also who TF says that. Red flag number 2. He asks me if I've been on many Bumble dates, to which I said yes, many. I've been single for a while, and I go on dates often. He didn't like this. He began asking me why I haven't settled down with any of them, and I explained that I've met lots of really great guys, but it just hasn't clicked yet. He then got weirdly quiet for a few minutes, and then said, "You know, not everyone is going to be as perfect as you. Life isn't a fairy tale. You have to give people chances, you know." Okay, so now I realize I am seated next to a French incel, or one in the making. Awesome. I reply and tell him that yes, I obviously know that. I don't think I'm perfect or better than anyone. I hadn't settled down because there hasn't been a strong connection thus far. Not because I am not giving these guys chances. That dating is a 2-person thing, and sometimes the guy doesn't want to meet again also. And that yes, I know life isn't a fairy tale. TF? Red flag 3. At one point on the steps he's asking me where I live, and I say, oh, just down there like 2 streets down. And he starts asking me where specifically, like is insisting I tell him which street. Jesus Christ. Oh, and there were a lot more self-deprecating sentences like, oh, just shit, sprinkled throughout. So at this point I'm trying to get out of here as soon as possible. We finish the wine and walk up the steps to the top, and am planning my exit. We get to the top, and he turns to me as I'm about to leave, and he looks at me and goes, you have to give me another chance. And say, listen, thank you for the wine, but I am not going to see you again, I'm sorry. He gets very upset. His eyes get huge, and he starts yelling, I did my studies, I have a CDI, you must give me a second chance. In France, a CDI is a permanent contract, and it's a big deal because you can't be fired, but like every person I know has a CDI. And since when does having a permanent contract equate to women owing you something? By now people are starting to look at us. I am calmly telling him that no, I don't think so, when he grabs my arm and keeps going on about his CDI. But people are looking, so he lets go, and I say to him that this is not fun, I am not enjoying this, and I don't have to do anything. He has a moment where I think he's about to hit me, and I can see his eyes thinking, and trying to figure out how to keep me here without causing a scene. And I take my chance and run down the stairs as fast as I can. And I am obviously terrified, because he knows the general area where I live. Thankfully he didn't follow me, likely because of the crowd of people who started watching us. Never blocked someone so fast in my life. He and I had began casually chatting through social media. I had remembered his face from the high school we had gone to. He was a year older than I, and during our high school years had been one of the guys that all the girls had gushed over in high school. I guess I felt flattered that he would speak to me after high school, after a few years. We had never spoken until a few years after high school, but during the time we had talked online, he seemed really nice and friendly. After talking online for a few days, he invited me out on his boat, which I agreed to. I figured why not. As soon as we get on the boat, he was just acting weird, just really overly flirty. Eventually he rammed his tongue down my throat, which was gross. I'm not sure why I kissed him back or didn't ask him to take me home. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, I guess. On the way back to my house, he kept glancing at me trying to be seductive and saying things like, you have no idea what I would do to you. And how good he thought I looked sitting there. He kept asking if he could go to my room, and we could hang out and watching a movie on my bed. I turned that offer down countless times. Later that night, my best friend and I were going to go dancing/drinking at a club. I can't remember how said guy was invited, but he ended up coming with us. We took my best friend's car, so it was just the 3 of us. I ended up drinking a lot of tequila that night. I didn't mean to get that drunk, but I did, enough to say a few sexually flirtatious things toward him. After the 3 of us left the club, I was still pretty trashed, but I laid down in the back seat of the car while he, the only sober one, drove my best friend and I back home. My best friend lived on the street behind me at the time, so he had parked his car at my best friend's house before we had originally left to go to the club. He dropped my best friend off and he helped me into his car. I noticed he had put the car doors on child lock. This is where things took a creepy turn. He started the car and kept saying how we were going to get a hotel together. I remember everything being really blurry, but I kept repeating the words no over and over again. He got mad and punched the steering wheel as he said, "Oh, come on. It's not like I'm going to do anything to you. And you're going to that hotel with me." I knew I had to think quick on my feet, so I agreed to go to the hotel with him only if he would stop at my house on the next street over, so I could get a change of clothes. He did, thankfully. As soon as the car doors were unlocked, I had never jumped out of a car so fast. He ended up begging me to let him stay at my house for the night, claiming that his grandparents, who he resided with at the time, had locked him out at the time of the night. I caved. I let him sleep in the guest bedroom. I locked my bedroom door and fell asleep. It was maybe around 3 a.m., and I woke up to what sounded like his shaking my door handle roughly, and he kept repeating my name. I was scared, so I just laid there and didn't move. I heard him walking back to the bedroom and the door close. The next day he said he was going to go home. He winked at me before leaving, and I never saw the guy again. Honestly, it was the weirdest and creepiest date of my life. Met a guy off a dating app at a restaurant. He looked nothing like his picture, but fine, I'm not rude. He ordered Diet Dr. Pepper with his meal, and drank the first one in 30 seconds or so, and started snapping at the waitress for more. I swear he drank 15 to 25 cups at least during this awful meal. I've never seen anything like it, and I was really uncomfortable and grossed out. He kept bringing up meeting his kids because they need a stepmom, and his mother because he's close to her, and she was gonna really love having me. He practically licked his plate clean, and I was so uneasy I couldn't eat, so he got a to-go box for my food. But for himself, I keep thinking gluttony, who drinks like that. No manners at all either. He called his mom during to let her know he found the one. I was barely even talking because his behavior was so gross, and then he didn't leave a tip. I went back and put a tip, and I took my time hoping he would just leave, but no, he was waiting. We went outside, and I was a little scared to walk to my car because of the conversation, and him saying his kids would love me as a stepmom and other nonsense. I told him thanks and bye, and he asks for a hug. I said I am not comfortable giving hugs to people at all, even ones I know well, so no. He then asks for a kiss. Now WTF? If I don't hug you, why TF would I kiss you? Seriously? I said no way. He then got closer and was saying please, please. I stepped back and said no thanks, seriously no. I decided to just walk to my car and drive to a store in case he followed me. He followed me to my car and was still asking for a kiss. I got in and locked the doors and drove off fast, hoping he didn't have time to follow me. I swear he teleported in his car because he was right behind me. He didn't obviously, he just happened to be parked a car away. I did drive around aimlessly for a while, then go to Target, because I was really afraid to drive straight home. It was crazy. Then he started texting me. I was trying to be nice, especially since it was the first date I'd gone on in years, and I thought maybe this is normal behavior. Maybe I'm being weird. He sent me photos of his kids in fancy clothes, saying they just bought new wedding outfits. He sent me pictures of him cooking chicken and of a pool, and told me I was to come spend the weekend swimming and eating at his place. He said he told his mom about me, and she can't wait to meet me. I blocked his number LOL. Then he started messaging me through the dating app, and I deleted the app. Scared me honestly, and I didn't go on another date for a couple years. The way he was dressed really bothered me too, which I know is stupid, but he was wearing a pink polo with jean shorts and black dress shoes, with white socks pulled up to his knees. The whole thing was kinda scary, kinda embarrassing. Sorry I didn't know which part of what he said was the worst, so I just shortened it as much as I could. I was at a good-sized house party in college, and the host introduced me to his lab mate shortly after I got there. We got to talking while things were warming up. No one was tanked yet, and people were still arriving. Eventually the lab mate asked me for my number. He was okay looking, seemed a little dull but harmless, and I agreed. We barely knew each other, but why not? It's college. You meet people and have a series of terrible and meaningless relationships. He disappeared shortly after. I didn't think much of it because the house was decent sized and figured he wandered off. The party ended around 3 when we were out of booze. The next morning around 8:30 a.m. I got a call. Barely conscious, maybe still a bit drunk, I answered like an idiot. It was him. He asked me out for a nice steak dinner and church that evening. To get him off of the phone as quickly as possible, so I could go back to sleep, I agreed to whatever he was asking without really understanding the question, and awoke around noon with no real memory of the conversation. He called me a few hours later asking me for my address, so he could pick me up. Memories came flooding back. I gave it to him, hastily showered, put on makeup and a nice outfit, regretting agreeing to this but looking forward to the steak, and went down to my apartment's garage to meet him. He was dressed short of schlubby, but I figured that's a grad student for you. I didn't think a nice place would really turn us away. As he drove, he proceeded to flip through dozens of songs, mostly Elvis, never letting one finish, sometimes starting from the beginning of the same song several times in a row. I heard the first minute of You Ain't Nothing But a Hound Dog more time than I care to admit that night. He then revealed to me he didn't like music, and everything on his iPod was from his dad borrowing it for a road trip. It was a 64 gigabytes, big for the time and expensive, with around 100 songs on it. Utterly bizarre and distracting. It also turned out he didn't really like anything, couldn't name a book he'd read since high school, or even one he enjoyed. Didn't watch TV but was lurking while his roommates were watching Faulty Towers, but didn't understand the humor, didn't have a favorite movie. His reply was, I like everything. When I asked and said he liked Titanic, didn't play video games. Didn't know Harry Potter was a book series before a movie. Favorite food was Taco Bell. What had I gotten into? We were heading to a nice part of town, past a couple of nice restaurants, and I eagerly asked him where we're going to end up. He replies with a vague, "Oh, you'll see." To keep the conversation going, I asked where he disappeared to last night. He said he left because his bedtime is at 10:30 p.m. sharp every night. I asked if that's why he'd called me so early. He seemed surprised and thought he'd given me time for sleeping in. Holy shit. My apprehension grew. He then turned suddenly into a Denny's parking lot. We go in. Shit. I'm way overdressed. We're seated. I figured I was promised steak. I'm getting one even if it's nastiest, most gristly slab of beef in the city. He turns to me and eagerly asks if I'm okay with splitting. I was tempted to buy us each our own damn steak, but to be polite and to not embarrass him I agreed, resolving to eat a proper dinner at home. The steak came, we split. I tried to not feel the judgmental eyes of the staff on me and proceeded to church. It was a Saturday night young adult service with contemporary music, and was supposed to be some sort of place for the non-secular devout to hang out on Saturday nights instead of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, I guess. Whatever the heathens do. Free coffee and stale donuts. During the singing, large group of people would jump up onto the pews and furiously bounce along to the music, belting out the lyrics. He was smiling, clapping his hands along to the music, and interjected with him waving his arms in the air. I was dying a little and couldn't wait to leave. They had a, thankfully, short service on keeping yourself pure, and my horror grew to the point I think I could power a small city with it. He was nodding along vigorously with the pastor, with the occasional uh-huh and other grunts of agreement. Did he bring me here to convert me from my sinful ways? Damn. The evening could have gone so much worse, but thankfully he didn't ask me what I thought of the service, or maybe he was astute enough to detect my ire. He took me home without incident. My roommates piled on me asking how it was, and well, I told them the same thing I'm telling here. I'm walking down the street, just finishing a conversation on my old-ass, craptastic flip phone. Just as I'm hanging up, wham, I know into someone and drop my phone. I apologize, grab my phone, and head back to work. 10 minutes later I get a phone call. Hey, I think we switched phones by accident. Turns out the girl I bumped into had the same phone as me. Anyways, we plan to meet at a local coffee place after work that day to trade back. I walk up and see this very cute ginger wearing a suit dress. We chat for a bit. Turns out she works at a bank, likes what I like, and is totally up for getting dinner this weekend. Great. Saturday evening rolls around, and I swing by her place to pick her up. Out her door walks a girl who looks remarkably like said date, only instead of professional office clothes, she is wearing 4-inch platform hoe boots, fishnet stockings, some sort of corset-like top, and in spiky hair. Now normally I don't really care about a person's style, but I was a bit taken aback. Who cares, I think, and jump out to open the door. Cue witty banter. Everything is going great. She's laughing at my jokes, and her humor seems to match mine perfectly. She asks what the plan is for the night, and I tell her I'm going to take her to my absolute favorite high-quality dining establishment and get her a Big Mac. Hell, if she plays her cards right, I might even supersize it. She runs with the joke, and even one-ups me. My spirits are high. She might have wild fashion, but this chick is cool. We arrive at this nice pub in town, and I turn off the car. What about McDonald's? Legit confused look on her face. I laugh, and upon seeing her face stop in confusion. We head inside and order dinner. I have a scotch and she orders the biggest boot. This restaurant has glass boots, of Bud Light I've ever seen. The waiter comes over and takes our order. As he's leaving, my date whispers rather loudly, I can't believe they let his people in such a classy place. We should probably check our food for spit before we eat it. Our waiter is black and has ears, so I am beginning to panic. She continues her whispered commentary on the supremacy of whites, all the while putting away an obscene, but impressive quantity of beer. Dinner arrives, and she makes a point of checking her plate for saliva. Waiter and I make eye contact, and I like to think that he understood that I agreed with him that this girl was nuts. So 3 more boots of beer later, she excuses herself for a bathroom break while I take care of the check. I apologize profusely to the waiter for my date's conduct. Dude is a true gentleman. Don't worry about it, man. There are all sorts of people in this world. My date returns and we head out. In my car she pulls out a cigarette and lights up. Doesn't even bother putting the window down. We should go shooting out at my dad's farm. What's your favorite fun? I vaguely excuse myself from such activities and point out that it is rather later and time to go home. I drop her off at her house and she says, this was great, except for that crap waiter. We should totally go get that Big Mac next time. See you soon. I flee. This is hands down the worst date, not only that I've had, but any of my friends have even heard about. When it got bad, that was only the prequel to what was to come. 2003, I'm at home and get a random phone call. I didn't own a cell, let's call her Melissa, is on the other end. She says she got my number from a mutual friend who thought that I would like her. Okay, this an odd phone call, but I'm really single, and a prospect of going on a date sounded delightful. We talk for more than an hour. She is sprinkling hints as to what she looks like. She also says she has seen pictures of me and thinks I'm cute. Bonus. She mentions her bra size more than once. Okay, sweet, I like a bigger-chested girl, I'm thinking. We line up a date for the next Saturday. It was Thursday. I live in town and she lives in a suburb that requires her to catch a train and then a bus, roughly a 2-hour ride to see me. I have no idea what she looks like, except that she has big boobs and brown hair. I'm standing in the spot where we decided to meet, and I'm seeing a girl kind of stumbling down the street. She's wearing those baggy-type jeans that goth kids wear, really baggy and frayed at the cuffs. Not my style at all. Also, she's got way too much makeup on. It's her, it's Melissa, my date. The reason she was stumbling is because she got a bit nervous at the idea of a blind date, so she picked up a Mickey for the train ride into town, then another for the bus ride, and I'm meeting 2 Mickeys deep and clearly drunk. The second she sees me, her haze-off drunk rises a notch to excitement, and she drapes herself across me in a sloppy hug with a butt grab added at the end. I'm confused and scared and nervous, and a bit frustrated all at once. I had planned to take her to play pool at an upscale place downtown that's kind of trendy. I mention it, and she's all for it as long as they serve alcohol. Okay. At the pool hall, the waitress gets us a table and asks us if we would like a drink. 4 shots of tequila and a pint of beer. She says, wow, okay, tequila? I'm not usually a fan, but okay. I say, oh, did you want some tequila too? She replies. They were all for her. Keep in mind it was probably around 3 in the afternoon. The shits come, and one after another without a pause goes down Melissa's throat. 1 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, 4, and then downs the beer. Upon finishing the beer, she looks right into my eyes and wipes the foam from her lips with the back of her hand. My mind pictured what a drunk rapist looks like moments before committing a rape. She saunters over to me while I trying to line up a shot and not notice how drunk she's getting. She leans over me while I'm bent over and says, you can take me. We can go to the bathroom right now if you want. I miss my shot partially due to the hand creeping its way to my crotch. I kind of laugh her off and say maybe we should wait until we finish the game. She lets out this impatient sigh and grabs my cue to make her shot. She isn't really lining it up, and then she takes a hit. It barely even grazed the cue ball. In frustration, Melissa throws the pool cue across the pool table, whereupon hitting the carpet snags it and creates a massive tear across the table. This is hilarious to her, and she starts laughing like an idiot hyena. I'm less than amused. I say I need to take a leak and head to the bathroom. I'm keeping an eye on my back as I do in the case she's tailing me. In the bathroom, I lock myself into a stall and put my face in my hands. How did I get here? Who is the woman, and why did I agree to this? How can I get out this? Where is my God, and why has he forsaken me? JK, I'm not religious. While I'm in the bathroom contemplating my poor life decisions, I'm hearing a commotion outside. Some sort of shouting and a glass breaking. I compose myself as best I can and leave my sanctuary. Melissa and the bartender are face to face yelling at each other. The bartender and also a friend is being rational and asking her not to pull at the tear created by her pool cue lancing. Apparently, she thought the hilarity would continue if she ripped more carpet off the table, while the waitress and bartender thought better. Melissa sees me and starts explaining how much these two are idiots. I try calming her and tell her maybe we should hit up another place anyway. She complies, thank God. I'm an opportunist, so I try to make the best of this situation. I'm mentally crossing off the date stuff I can do with this girl in her inebriated state, and come to conclusion it would be best to just get drunk and pass the time until her scheduled bus leaves. She's all for it, surprise, surprise. I grab a case of beer, and being a sunny day I suggest a beach not far from the train station. I've stated more than once now that she should be on her way when the bus gets here. I didn't want her to have to be stranded in town if she did, I say. She's reluctantly agrees. We pass the next few hours drinking on the beach, and her trying her best to paw at my crotch. By about 6:30 or so I'm fairly buzzed and not far from ending this odd scenario. It's about time to head to the bus station. She's moving at half speed now, and hinting that she doesn't want to leave yet. I'm not paying attention, but instead taking her by elbow and inching toward her bus. She doesn't have any more money. I pay for the ticket. The bus driver takes her ticket, but she doesn't get on. Instead, she looks over her shoulder at me and then proceeds to empty her stomach right on the first step of the bus. The bus driver pushes her back, curses her out, closes the door, and peels off. Oh God, no. Wiping her mouth of leftover vomit, she gives me a faint smile and says, "Well, looks like we can hang out a little longer." I'm not amused, I'm not trying to hide it either. I'm not smiling, I'm not being polite, I'm a totem of disappointment. I'm walking away from the train station with her in tow. She explains that she has nowhere to go, and it really isn't a big deal if she just goes home with me. And besides, we can have some fun while we're at it. No. I let the steam of anger simmer down a bit and think logically, mistake. She really doesn't have anywhere to go, and it would be a dick move to just leave her to her own devices. Reluctantly, I tell her she crash at my place, but it's going to be on my couch. She's all for it. I live with my cousin at the time, and he's home. He sees this atrocity come in behind me and runs to his bedroom, stifling the laughs along the way. Fuck you, cuz. We watch a bit of TV while finishing the last of the beer in my fridge. I tell her it's getting late and I'm gonna call it a night. I grab some extra blankets and pillows for her. She takes them quietly and thanks me. It's the middle of the night. I'm awakened by a sensation in being crushed. Melissa is on top of me. On top, my blankets fully clothed and our faces are inches apart. I couldn't sleep, is all she says. I tell her to get off of me and that she's hurting me. She gets up. She says she didn't want to sleep in my living room and asks if she can sleep in here with me. Wordless, I get up, grab the blankets and pillow from the living room and make a bed next to mine. She watches me do this, and when I finish, instead saying anything, I point to the bed and climb back into my own. Once more that night, she attempted to get on top of me. Also, she never took her shoes off. The heavens smile upon me by blessing me with daybreak. I wake her up and repeat the process of taking her to the bus station. This time the formalities are gone. There's your bus, don't puke this time. No, I didn't have a good time, but goodbye anyway. On returning home, I pull out my black book and look up our mutual friend, and proceed to rag her out for putting me through such an ordeal. My friend is perplexed and has no idea who Melissa is. I describe her, and there's a moment of silence. She says she remembers now, it makes sense, she says. My friend had her friend from out of town come to visit, but she had brought along her cousin, who was high-functioning, but a special needs student. Her mother was in the process having her signed over to a group home here in town. When Melissa visited my friend, she apparently went through her things and found a photo of me with her with my phone number on the back and took it. I went on a date with a mentally disabled woman. First date with my ex. He picked me up at home. We drive 1 block to his friend's house, where he walked straight to the backyard and started yelling, "Tony." No answer. He gets mad. We leave. He never told me what our date would consist of, so as we're driving, I'm looking around and had no idea where we were going. He finally pulls up to the bowling alley in our town. He said he took the back way because he wanted to surprise me. I honk, he just got lost. Game 1 commences. I win. He says he let me win because he wanted to be nice. Game 2, I win. Game 3 rolls around, and he's mad because I'm kicking his ass. He was trying his damnedest to beat me. It was quite funny as he was sweating and cursing up a storm with every gutter ball. I asked him if he wanted bumpers as a joke. He just ignored me and sat down across from. I win Game 3. Then I mentioned to him that I used to be on a bowling league and am very kick-ass. We leave after Game 3. We go get Chinese food. We eat, have a conversation. Typical date stuff. He goes up to the counter to ask for a refill on his drink. Cashier asks for the 15 cents refill charge as stated on posted sign on the cash register. He flips out and walks away and tells me we're leaving. I hadn't even finished my food. He drives me back to his friend's house and goes back to the back and continues to yell, "Tony." He gets no answer again. He then tells me they were playing video games and he wanted to finish the game earlier, but since Tony wasn't there, he tried again after our date. With nothing left to do, he drives me the 1 block back home. Needless to say, we dated for a year and a half after that. Things ended after a bad Valentine's Day date. Edit, Tony, I already knew him. My ex, Tony, and I were all on yearbook staff together. Valentine's Day date, for those asking, it's long. I got off of an 8-hour shift at work. I was a waitress and on my feet all day. On the way home, he texted me to hurry up and get ready. I just wanted to relax a bit, shower and rest my feet. After I told him I would be ready around 9, he said I needed to be ready earlier. There was never any mention of any reservations to me, so I didn't know why he needed me to be ready before 9. Anyway, he picked me up and we started driving, and it was completely silent. I didn't say anything until we parked in front of BJ's. It was crowded and I said, "Looks busy, we're not going to get a table." He replied, "I had a reservation but you weren't ready on time." A fight started because he was mad that we didn't make it to our reservation. I was mad because I was never told of a reservation, and I would more than likely be paying for dinner, because I was the only one who had a job. His parents never gave him money because they didn't like me. At one point he started punching his steering wheel, and I noped the fuck out of his car and ran to a closed-down furniture store. I called a co-worker, and when my ex ran after me, I told him to stay away from me and that he would never see me again. My co-worker left his date and came to pick me up. The next day I went to pick up my shit and from the ex's house. Okay, I saw him once more, but it was to pick up my shit. I gave him back his promise ring, and he actually said, "Hopefully the next girl will appreciate it more." I told him it wasn't smart to give that ring to the next girl. He texted me later while I was at work, and he said, "Give me some time, and then we can be friends." I never texted him back, and haven't spoken to him since. Yes, the coworker had feeling for me, and yes, we eventually began dating. He wasn't a rebound. We're still together 5 years later, and getting married next year. So what if I don't know what needless means? Seemed right at the time I was typing this. Here is a summary. I had met this guy this summer, and we hit it off really well. He made me crab cakes. I'm from Maryland, so that is always great in my book. And we watched the fireflies in the forest behind his house, under the stars. We both agreed we had really enjoyed ourselves. We hooked up, that was great too. We decided to go get McFlurries from McDonald's, and I thought, I don't need any shoes. Now keep in mind I'm 5'6" 120 pounds, blonde hair. 19, so we hop in the car. His car is low and has tinted windows, so it looked sketch. We got ice cream and we were driving back, and he gets pulled over for not turning on his left turn signal at a left green arrow. The cop asks me my name, and he goes back to his car. 15 minutes pass, and we're both freaking out. Then another cop car pulls up. Rewind, I lost my wallet during the school year, and it was given to a cop. Unfortunately, there was a false ID in there, so I was called and had to go get it. But they didn't say I was being charged, so they took my ID and I left. I get a call about a month later, and the cop says, "You need to come into the station to sign papers," and I asked, "Can you explain to me what's happening?" He said, "You just need to fill out some paperwork. Those who listen are better off than those who don't," and hung up. So I was thinking, was that a threat or no? I called my dad and he talked to my uncle who was a cop, and they told me not to go in. Apparently, it was a summons I had to sign. And since I didn't go in, it turned into a warrant for my arrest. Unfortunately, I had no idea because they were sending all the papers to my mailbox at my dorm at school, which is not where I live in the summer. So fast forward. The cop comes back to the car and says, "Ma'am, did you know there is a warrant out for your arrest?" I had no idea. Fortunately, the kid I was with knew about everything previously. We waited for the cop to call the police, which was 3 hours away, and he told me he wasn't sure if they were going to have to come get me, or if I could be detained in the county I was in. So we waited, and waited, and waited. Finally, he comes around and says I have to be detained there. A female cop comes to my side and asks me to get out. Ironically, I'm in a black and white striped dress, also with no shoes. They handcuffed me and put me in the cop car. I wanted to cry, but I couldn't wipe the tears off my face. I got to the jail with no idea of what was going to happen. They searched me, asked me questions, and put shackles on my ankles. I had no shoes on, and my toes kept getting caught in the chains. Then they put me in a cell. I sat. They took my picture, my prints and all. They also laughed because it was a first date. -3:30 rolls around, and finally they let me go out and sign papers. They take those fucking shackles off my ankles, and I call the kid. Thankfully, I wrote his number on my hand before they took me away. He was right in the front with my shoes, my mom and my sister. His dad bought me coffee in the morning and a muffin, then have me a high five. I'll tell it from the bad date's side. We had never been on a date, and she barely knew me. It was our first date and certain to be our last. I picked her up and immediately commented on her appearance. How gorgeous she looks, blah blah blah. She was not a woman to be objectified, however sexy she may have been, and within minutes I was on strike one. I took her to my friend's house. It was Christmas break, so he presented me with a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I rolled us a few joints. Nothing too weird yet. Nothing she hasn't seen. Well, I open the bottle, and we do a couple of shots. Just then, he pulled out this antique Soviet sniper rifle, and we began taking it apart and talking about how badass the hammer and sickle looks on the iron sights. It was a Mosin, and what kind of killing you could do with it from over 2 miles away. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed my date was frozen. She was rigid with fear. Then, my buddy pulls out his brand new top-of-the-line USP, military-grade handgun, and shows me its dank sliding action. I'm blatantly aware by now of how bad this looks, but we'd crossed the point of no return, and there was nothing left to do now but embrace it. Besides, the guns were admittedly very cool. Surely she knew that. We are otherwise nerdy gamers, or else we wouldn't even know these guns exist. So we didn't for a moment consider how white trash, redneckish, and sketch we must seem to outsiders. Hey, I know how you love drug abuse, so I bought you a bottle of whiskey. By the way, check out my growing arsenal. I think an AK-47 also came out. Well, allow me to carry out this white trash behavior to its bitter end. While drinking and driving away from my friend's house, the girl wants desperately to be dropped off back at her car. This is illegal in so many ways, and I've even offered her alcohol from the driver's seat. She was 18, and this is America. Land of the free, not so much. Not like this. At the Burger King drive-thru, I decide I'm feeling overly emotional about my mother's recent death, and I'm overcome by the sudden realization that every relationship I've chased was a diversion from layers of grief beginning at early childhood. You tend to think more candidly about your problems when you're in the company of someone who makes you want to be better. That, combined with the obvious failure of this evening, and my unwillingness to be anything other than a wild-eyed extension of my ID before this girl, on whom I made a horrible, lasting impression, is all too much. The jig was up. I dropped the whole effort and admitted the only thing I wanted from her ever again was a hug. And if I could just have that, I will write the whole thing off. Surprisingly, she obliged, and we hugged for a solid minute. Fuck, I needed that, I thought. And I thanked her. She said, "You're welcome." I then became profoundly depressed, no doubt exacerbated by the alcohol and marijuana. But I was honest and I was myself, and I didn't care that she hated me. It was better to have that than for her to like anyone else I could only pretend to be. She sped away in her Saturn, and her friend said I scared her half to death, and to just forget about it. I wouldn't see her again for another 2 years, when we met at a coffee shop. I was in college by then, cleaned up my act, got dressed, and headed in a new direction. Again, I made no effort to impress her, but somehow I did. We've been together for 2.5 years, and she understands me better than anyone else in this world. And she loves me. The real me. What a horrible date, though. It's her favorite story to tell. Alright, Reddit, let's talk about Lily. Lily was one of my half a dozen or so OkCupid hookups this year. Now, I'll preface by saying that I don't take OkCupid very seriously anymore at all. I made a second account while I was recovering from knee surgery, and have used it on and off ever since depending upon how bored I am. One night, I get a few profile views and an unexpected message, Lily. She lived about an hour away, and we got to talking about nothing in particular. She was trying to impress me with decent grammar. I type pretty well for a guy on OkCupid, apparently, and I was fairly bored with her personality. We weren't a high match percentage to begin with, and she just seemed to be throwing herself at me too easily. These apps and websites have put a lot of women on such a pedestal that when they make it too easy, it's kind of a red flag. We exchanged actual numbers, although I'm not exactly sure why I bothered. I guess I was feeling particularly desperate. At any rate, 5 minutes into texting, she just starts unloading naked pictures at me. They were obviously previously saved on her phone, and I was not attracted to her at all. She had the body of a woman who looked twice her age and not well taken care of at all. She was 25. The conversation faded out, and we only spoke once or twice in the coming weeks, and not for very long. At one point, she even told me she wasn't interested because she didn't like men in uniform, and to stop talking to her. I did, but she messaged me again anyway. Then my friends, it happens. I am laying in bed around 2 o'clock in the morning, and my phone buzzes. I sleepily roll over and check the message. "Hey, what are you doing?" We exchange early morning pleasantries where I explain that I'm sleeping regardless of her being bored. As it were, Lily was a stripper, and that was likely her stage name. I was just now learning these facts. She was asking if she could drive the hour to my house and sleep with me. I was hesitant at first, but in a moment of weakness I agreed to let it happen. She shows up nearly 3 hours later in a pair of stripper heels and a very unattractive dress that smelled of broken dreams and body odor. She explains that she got pulled over on her way to my house, and proceeds to explain that the police continually harass her for no reason. She was also a good 3 inches taller than she had indicated, too. I was already not feeling this entire encounter when she strolled into my house and demanded I give her a beer. She starts dumping a Bud Light down her throat and essentially says, "Let's get to it." We go upstairs where she lays on my bed and begins criticizing me for just assuming we were going to hook up. Wait, what the fuck? She mocks my choice of interior decorations and scoffs at my scanner when it went off for a traffic stop, noting about her disdain for local law enforcement once more. She then tells me about how she failed out of USMC boot camp, has a child and a baby daddy, sugar daddy, lives off of her mentally ill father, and works as a stripper for fun. I take a chance to shut her up, lean in, and I kiss her. She sets the beer down and seems to enjoy this awkward yet alright kiss. This begins the single worst makeout session of my entire life. I didn't think it was humanely possible to be such a horrible kisser, but by God, it certainly is. She is literally sucking on my mouth like some sort of suction cup and pulling on my hair. She undoes my trousers, and I thank the heavens above I'll at least get something out of this horrible experience. Yeah, wrong. Although she does go down on me, her fellatio is just as bad as her kissing. She is ramming my poor junk into the back of her throat and grinding her teeth around my shaft. I am squirming and begging her to stop. Pretty sure she was strangely into that. After several painful minutes, she slips off her underwear and says, "My turn, bitch." I can't make this stuff up. Swallowing, I think to myself, Hollywood Jones, old boy, you've come this far. You may as well ride the train until the end of the line. I go down on this girl, and it is awful. It is awful because she smells and has the single most abnormal clitoris I have ever dealt with. It reminded me of silly putty. I don't know how, but it just did. She criticizes every motion of my tongue to the point where it becomes irritating, all the while she is pulling on my hair and smacking my head like a bongo drum. She lifts her right leg up a little and proceeds to fucking fart in my face. She literally rips a fart into my face and starts laughing about it. I am absolutely mortified, and finally, she pushes my head off and yells, "Are you going to fuck me or what?" I proceed to start going at it, where she refuses to sit still for more than several seconds at a time. Every time we engage in one position, she is flipping herself into some awkward pretzel to do something else. She starts complaining about my bad leg, military injury, and how I can't do several things she likes. She finally declares, "I'll just fuck you myself." I lay on my back as she hovers over me, and then lets out an audible queef, on purpose, I swear to God, and it sprays me with vaginal fluid. I can't contain my distaste for what she's just done as she slides down, still queefing, on top of me. After about a minute of that, she declares, "Okay, I'm all set," and hops off me of. She starts to get dressed in a hurry and says adios, quite sharply as she stomps down my stairs. I am laying there naked and confused, but proceed to follow her downstairs to lock the door after her. She is still putting her shoes on and says to me, "Nice meeting you and all, but don't ever text me again." At this point I just laugh, and she slams my own door in my face. She texted me about a half hour later to tell me what a great guy I am and to take care. I never replied and deleted her number. I don't know if I would consider any of this a date, but this seems like the best place to post it. I have only started dating in past year or so, but I already have plenty stories to tell. This is on the first date with my ex. I meet him while going to work one day, and his second time asking me out. I accepted and we planned to go to the movies. We meet at the theaters but missed our showtime, so we get tickets for the next showing. I bought my own ticket and he bought his own, no big deal. He then stated that he was hungry and asked if I was hungry as well. I told him I was, and we went to the mall to eat. We get in line and he orders his meal and then turns to me and says that he couldn't afford to buy me anything. I wasn't upset that he didn't pay for my things. I was more upset that he admitted that he could barely afford to go on a date. I mean, why suggest the movies if you couldn't afford the price? Slightly put off, but I didn't end it like I should have done. He eats his meal, and we walk out where he proceeds to smoke until our movie began. Walked into the theater and sat down away from other people. About halfway through, he starts kissing me, and I realized that he didn't take anything for his breath. My mind was seriously preoccupied about his breath, rather than the fact that it was my first kiss. A little more into the movie, he starts to get handsy. His hands went from my shoulder to trying down my shirt to play with my boob. I asked him to stop, which he did, but decided that I'll probably say yes 5 minutes later. We made out until the end of the movie while keeping his hands away from my chest. You would have thought that I was smart enough to dump him, right? Wrong. I proceeded to date this loser and creep for a long time due to my self-esteem issues. Took a while to realize I deserved better than him, and I broke it off with him. I cringe at the fact that he was my first everything. So this date was the first and last with this guy I met from OkCupid. I talked to him and seemed genuine and nice, so we exchanged numbers. We texted for a bit and decided to meet each other after a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, I was working and going to school at the same time, so my schedule was filled. I managed to get out of work early one day, but he had to change the time of our meeting. So he convinced me to meet him right after work and in my uniform. I was horrified and nervous, but decided to go with it. I met him for an early dinner, which he paid for, and talked while we were eating. I finished, and he decided to tell me he wanted to kiss me. Instead of waiting to chew on some gum I had, he kisses me right after we ate. Once again, that was all I could think of. We walk around where he decided to show his pervy side off. Goes for a couple of butt and boob grabs as well as pushing me to the walls to kiss me. I decided to sit him to tell him that I wasn't feeling it, but I didn't get a chance to. He bought me ice cream, and then told me that my shyness was making him feel sexually aggressive. Then asked when was the last time I had sex, and wondered if I could have sex with him, because it has been 9 months for him. Ended the date, and walked away. I have some more, but I think these two were the worst of all my dates. It was an OkCupid date. Bit of backstory first. It had been 4 years since I broke up with my ex for cheating and lying, and then accusing me of not trusting her. As if you gave me any reason to, you fuck. In those 4 years, I had been on a lot of dates with a lot of different women. All of them ended in rejection. Half of them were because I screwed it up, the other half were because she was either legitimately not interested, which is fine, or she was a bitch. I figure around 25% of people are bitches/assholes, so this works out okay. So I was lonely as fuck, a bit mopey, and quite sensitive, which I think is understandable given the situation. So back to the date. This girl messaged me on OkCupid, let's call her asshole, and she's not 100% my type, but I'm a sucker for the girl taking the lead, so I went with it. She suggests we meet up in the city for ice cream and a comedy show, and I accept. I arrived at the ice cream place where we were to meet, and waited for 5 minutes. She showed up, came in, sat down, and everything went quite smoothly for the first half of the date. Conversation flowed. She was more attractive in person than in her picture. Great. We went to the comedy show to find it was sold out, and they turned us away. Whatever, she said we could go for a walk around town instead, fine. During that walk, she went from interested and participating in the conversation to cold and distant. When I stopped walking briefly to look at something, she kept going, and didn't even turn to look at me. She gave me one-word answers if she even replied at all, and when I happened to brush up against her arm, she visibly shied away. I got fucking tired of this quickly. I just flat out asked her, "Are you having a bad time?" Her reply made me want to burn things with a flamethrower. To be honest, I go on these dates a few times a week just for fun, maybe a free meal, and a good story to tell my girlfriends. I'm not looking for anything, at least not from you. On paper you're nice and all, but in person there's just nothing about you. You won't even make a good story. Instead of doing what any sane person would do, ditching her right there and going home to masturbate, I walked her to her car while seething internally. Asshole made me feel like an absolute worthless piece of shit, and it took a while and a fair amount of talking with my close friends to come back from that. But as chance would have it, a month later I ended up meeting an amazing girl who, when I told her this story, offered to help me exact vengeance on Asshole. I turned it down, but I've been dating Amazing Girl for almost a year, and every so often she still offers. Once upon a time I worked at GameStop, and this dude asked me out on a date while I was working. I'd never been on a date with someone I'd just met, so I figured why not, and said yes. Here's how it went. When he came to pick me up, he sat outside of my house and honked his horn until I came outside. I asked him what he wanted to do, dinner, a movie, etc. His reply was, "I don't really have any money, so I was thinking that we could just go for ice cream." Kind of a curveball, but I went with it. The whole way to the ice cream place he talks about nothing but getting wasted with his buddies. Oh, good. We get there and are standing in line, and I mention that I'm planning to move to Ontario, neighboring province. And he replies with, Oh, I lived in Toronto for a while, but I lived in a neighborhood with a lot of niggers in it, so obviously it was super unsafe. So I moved back. We're both Caucasian. I realize that there's a nice black couple in line behind us who obviously overheard this moron and are offended. Great, now I'm an asshole by association. We finally get to the front of the line, and I place my order first. $2.50 hot fudge sundae. I turn and wait for him to order, and he looks at me and goes, "Well, aren't you going to pay for your ice cream?" The cheap fucker. By this point I'm thinking exit strategies, but the bus stop is a far walk, and I just used my change buying myself an ice cream, so I figure I'll just wait it out. We eat our ice cream in relative silence, and I give the old, "Oh, I just got a text from my friend, I need to go." So we leave, thankfully. He drives me home, and as I'm about to get out of the car, he leans in to kiss me. This is not happening, so I get out of the car and say no thanks. He honks the horn at me as I walk from the car to my house. This dude even had the gall to show up with his buddies at my work a few days later to try and chew me out for being a bitch on our date, which seemed to make him feel better until I started describing the date in front of his friends, at which point he retreated to the entrance of the store to glare at me until I threatened to have mall security escort him out. Awesome. So, I get an itch for some delicious sashimi from my favorite restaurant in town, and I drive on over. "Table for one, please." The cute hostess seats me and kind of gives me the eye. I brush it off and pay no mind. I start answering some work emails on my phone as my meal arrives, and I continue to reply to these shits and eat my food in peace. "Hello, can I sit with you?" I'm on break. It's the cute hostess. I put my phone down and tell her she's more than welcome. We enjoy some small talk, and she asks me to hang out. I figured I'd go for it since she's kinda cute, but a little invasive. Whatever. So that night, it's 10 p.m., and she calls me and asks me to go out with her and her friends. I say no, but she insists and she offers to pick me up. My truck was in the shop, so I figured that was pretty nice of her. Little did I know she was doing it to give me no way out of her crazy trap. We hit up this huge dance club, which is something I never do because it's way out of my comfort range. She introduces me to like 10 of her friends. All of them giggle and smile, and I hear one say, "He looks like he could be the one." What the fuck? Do I look like Keanu? Whatever. I order a beer and ask her if she wants a drink. She's like, "Oh, I'll get my own," and orders 5 shots of Sky vodka and drinks them all in succession. So here I am, with this girl whose friends think I'm going to marry, and she's fucking shit can hammered. Great. "Hey, this place is a little intense for me. We should split." She's like, "I'll BRB," and comes back with 2 shots of Jameson. I take them because fuck it. I'm stuck now, and if something happens I'd like to use, I was drunk, as an excuse. Last call comes around, and we're walking out the door. She insists on driving, and it's like a 5-minute ride back to our neighborhood, so I figure I'd like to live dangerously for one evening and hop in the passenger side. I'm drunk enough, and I want the night to be over. Fuck it. She takes me to her fucking parents' house instead of her apartment. It's 20 minutes from my house. No chance in walking home now. Sad face. We walk in and she's like, "Do you want some wine?" "I want some wine." I'm going to get us some wine from the wine cellar. Little did I know, her parents own the restaurant in which this tale began. She comes back up from downstairs with this bottle of wine. God knows what kind it was. I'm not sure if it was $6 or $600. I didn't care anymore. I can't find a corkscrew. And she hammers the glass on the edge of the countertop and makes a smooth break. I was pretty impressed, but still kind of worried about my fate. Oh shit, I gotta let my dogs out. She opens the cages and lets these dogs just shit on the floor and says to me, "Pretend like you didn't see that. Let's go up to my room. I want to show you something. Do you want some Coke?" "No thanks, but I'll come with you." At this point, I was ready to bang her or hang myself, as there was no way out of this predicament. We head upstairs and she breaks out a mirror and cuts up a few lines. "I want to read you something." She starts reading me journal entries and the shittiest poetry I've ever heard as she does lines and drinks wine. These are journal entries from when I was in rehab. I used to do a lot of coke. I went through a really rough time with my ex-husband when we lived in Italy. I didn't know it, but he was gay. I tried everything I could to make him straight again, or even be attracted to me more. I even let him fuck me in the ass. Something along those lines. So here I am, in this chick's parents' house at 5 in the morning, drunk and listening to her terrify me with her life story the first time we met. She puts her journal, the cocaine, and the glass of wine, It was more of a cup like you would use for your morning glass of milk or whatever. Down and asks me if she can try something. Whatever, go ahead. I'm frustrated, drunk, tired, annoyed, and this girl won't shut the hell up. She climbs on top of me and starts gyrating on my man parts and playing with herself. I'm thinking, this is a really unorthodox way of trying to get someone to fuck you, but whatever. So I go with it. Like a minute later, she gets off of me and grabs my dick and says, "You're hard. I thought I was kind of scaring you, but I see that I'm turning you on. But I don't want to have sex with you. It's our first date." I tell her I'm tired and I have underscore 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 to do the next day. I just want to sleep. So I make a weird barrier of blankets between us and pass out. The next day she drives me home and asks if I would like to hang out again. Sure, I said as sarcastically as possible, thinking me might get the hint, and I just the door and walk to my apartment. That night she calls me again and asks me if I want to go see Lady Gaga. I've always wanted to see a Lady Gaga show, but I had to bail for the sake of my own sanity. Row 4. RIP. I joined website for dating to try and get more dates. That was my only intent. I've been working too much for 2 years at my new job. I just wanted to have more fun. I got an email and set up a date with this girl. It's my 5th date from the site. It's been fun. But this one girl was like one of those love at first sight moments when we met at a restaurant. I saw HH and she was perfect. I tried to play it cool, but I felt like I could just cut ties with all the girls I've dated and just commit to her. Physically, she was everything I could ever ask for and exactly my type. Her personality seemed about a 10 out of 10. About 30 minutes into sitting down, we didn't even order cause we were just talking. The chemistry was as good as it was with my first love when I was 13. It was perfect, sparks were flying. I thought I was done and ready to commit here. But then she tells me to forget about ordering food. Let's go somewhere else, and she has this idea. She won't say much, and I like surprises, so I didn't ask much. We jumped in my car and drove to this restaurant about 20 minutes away, kind of out of town. It was halfway up a mountain near a ski resort. I'm familiar with the area, so no big deal. We walk in, and her family is celebrating her aunt's birthday. There was only family and a lot of it, about 40 people. She introduces me, and everybody was happy to meet me, and real nice. Everybody also knew that she was out on a first date. They were asking her stuff like, "Is this the guy? Is this your date? Is this the one?" All of a sudden I wasn't so cool and relaxed. I felt heavy pressure to be on my best behavior. It was high pressure to the 3rd degree. But everybody was nice, so that helped. We sat down and I started being questioned by her older sister, her aunt, and another lady that I forget her relation to my date. The mom started kind of defending me and telling them to back off and let me eat. But the interrogating continued. After I don't know how long, they turned to my date and jokingly said, "We approve." Then I was able to kind of get my bearings about me for a minute. I was totally off balance all night, just tense. I was afraid the back of my shirt would get that a big wet spot because I felt sweat on my back. So the sister brings her cute little girl and lets me hold her, and she and my date started taking pictures of me holding her, and somebody else's baby boy as well. I started to feel like the tone of it all was that we were a couple. I kind of felt like I was married to her, and these nice people were my in-laws. After a couple of hours, probably closer to 3 hours, everybody was kind of tiring out and everything began to wind down. Keep in mind her car is still at the other restaurant down the hill. Then her dad suddenly asks me jokingly what my intentions are with his daughter, though I can't remember how he phrased the question. Everybody looked at the table, looked at me, which is about half the people there. I guess I was exhausted from all the questioning. I was questioned by multiple people multiple times, and the pressure of it all because I kind of lost it. He asked the question, I looked across the table at her, and she told her dad to stop it. Her dad smiles and jokingly says that he'd really like to hear my response, and her uncle, I think, also said he'd like to know jokingly. I looked at my date and said, "Can I talk to you alone for a minute?" To which her dad laughs loudly and then says I made him nervous. So everybody is laughing now, and I guess it was a big joke. Then I said to my date, "Hey, can I talk to you alone for a minute?" I stood up in place, it was one of those long bench seats, and I couldn't push it back cause other people were sitting on it. Then her sister, I think, says, "Oh, there are no secrets in this family, speak your mind." People then laugh again, and everybody starts making jokes about not having secrets, and this man who married into the family somehow tells me that he remembers being in my place, and he says, Let me give you some advice. The best thing to do right now is speak your mind and be honest. Then others join in and echo his sentiment, all jokingly, I think. So I looked at my date and she says something like, "You can tell me anything here, we're all family." She also, I think, was joking. But I had started to lose my ability to tell when people were joking and when they were serious. So the dad says, "Wait, I haven't gotten an answer to my question." So finally I speak directly to the dad and say, "I'd like to discuss that with her first." But I regretfully laughed as I said it. So her dad says, "I asked you first, I want to know." I turn to my date and she says something like, "Go ahead, you can tell me. I'm a big girl, I can handle it." So I said okay, and sat down, then took a couple of breaths while her dad kind of quieted everybody down. I started with, "I think I made a huge mistake." It all spiraled down from there. I said harsh things like that I felt like I was having a bad dream where I was suddenly married. I questioned her intentions in bringing me there. I said stuff like, "What were you thinking? Yes, I liked you, but I just met you, and right now I know your aunt." I pointed at her sitting next to me. "Better than I know you." I think she was humiliated, but I couldn't stop. The more I spoke, the more bad stuff came out. Total fucking tailspin. I said I want to find someone special, but I don't want to skip the first 29 dates and skip to date 30, which is what I'd done that night. Then people started interrupting and chiming in and suggesting that she and I slow down and have a real first date. I wasn't having it. I was out of control. I said, "No, it's too late for that. I feel robbed here. I wanted to meet this girl, get to know her, date her, and maybe fall for her. But now it's like we're engaged and her whole family is here, and there are all these expectations. We skipped the getting to know each other and dating part, so I feel robbed." Then I said yet another thing I regret. I said it's a huge red flag, with an emphatic gesture, that I asked for a minute alone with you to talk, and this is what I got instead. I added something like, "You're all great and a great family, but the lack of certain boundaries is a huge red flag for me. I would never let my relationship become family business." My date interrupts me at this point and says, "Okay, so let's talk in private. Let's go outside and talk. I'm sorry I didn't give you that minute. Let's go outside and talk privately. I'll give you all night." She was visibly shaken, and I could tell tears were inevitable. I stood up again, and realizing that I had insulted all of them, I just quietly walked out. I felt really bad cause they were all nice and had nothing but the best intentions for me. They love her, and they were literally telling me that I was good enough, which should have been a compliment, but I somehow took it the wrong way and spat in their face. I didn't even drink. Junior prom. A few weeks before prom, one of, if not the prettiest girls in the school, didn't have a date yet. I knew she'd fairly recently broken up with her boyfriend, so in all likelihood she was holding out. But regardless, that just means most other folks already had dates. It was a small school. One day I gathered up enough balls to ask if she'd like to go with me. We'd been casually talking in the hallways before school, but nothing crazy. I didn't for a minute think she liked me. Surprisingly, she said yes. Over the next few weeks I'd stop by and see her at work after school or on weekends. One day she was feeling particularly shitty and I, cheesily, had flowers delivered in an effort to cheer her up. Back then I lacked a lot of confidence, so I was quite good at being the nice guy for a girl while she pined over someone else. Anywho, to move the story along, we get to prom. It's catered. She doesn't talk much at the table, to me or anyone. The evening goes on and things don't change much. Her mind is just elsewhere. Eventually the music cranks up. I'm not a huge fan of dancing, and I was feeling pretty defeated myself at this point. So I stepped out for a few minutes to gather my shit, and came back in right around the time the first slow song came on. We started dancing, and about midway through her complete, arrogant jackass of an ex walks up, cuts me out, tells me he's taking over. She proceeds to spend the whole evening with him, essentially, quite happily I might add. It was tradition at our school for groups to arrange a trip after prom as well, and we'd both decided to go to the same one, a theme park. But of course he did too. As you can imagine, nothing else changed over the next couple days. They sat together on the bus and basically spent the whole time up each other's ass, and she didn't speak to me the rest of the time. And just to add this to it, even though it's, for me, the least hurtful piece, I paid for everything. Her ticket, the photos, the trip. She paid for her dress, and that was about it. Once all was said and done, I realized that she really just wanted a way in. She was a sophomore and couldn't go unless she went with an upperclassman. I was a junior. Good enough. Which seems fitting. I've always been and felt good enough. It wasn't a date, but he'd convinced himself it was. Mutual commiseration over the two of us not getting to go on the company trip at a bar near the shop. Coincidentally, near his house too, so I parked there to avoid paid parking. Then he asked me to come inside to pre-game, and I got weird vibes. I'd turned him down twice before, and something about the scenario flicked a switch. I lied and said I'd rather have only one at the bar as I was going to drive home later. And he goes, "Oh, I've got sealed drinks in the fridge and my roommates are home, don't worry." Bro, now I'm extra fucking worried. Edit. Because people have been asking, I'll explain my thought process and fear behind that particular situation. TLDR, don't, when completely unprompted, reassure someone of the reasons you can't/won't drug or rape them when they turn down an offer to pre-game. I'll admit to being a pretty paranoid person. I went to school to be a police officer and am an insufferable party mom. I don't drink booze out of open spirit bottles at an acquaintance's house. I also don't go into other people's homes without at least one other close friend with me. Both are rules born out of necessity, as I've been drugged at a party via a drink I watched poured. Never trust box wine. They cut open the bag and put it back inside the box, and never let out of my sight. I've also had to case a house to find a plastered friend who'd been swept away to someone's room. So again, I'll admit the odds were stacked against him on that one. The thing that first set me off was the offer to come inside. I'd already turned down his advances twice before, and he was proving himself to be disrespectful of my boundaries, and my straightly delivered no, as one commenter points out, he was super awkward, so I was willing to give friendship a chance. It's why I even considered going to the bar with him in the first place. I had no idea at the time anyone else was home, and it was too intimate an offer to be sure he'd be respectful of my space in his own home. The nail in the coffin was when told I just wanted one drink at the bar and then to head home. He responded with what was essentially, "Oh, well, don't worry, I'm not going to rape you or anything." He didn't know I was lying or super uncomfortable, and that just affirmed to me that, yeah, you can't take no for an answer, and I'm pretty sure you don't intend to leave after we go inside. Which proved correct based on his ensuing behavior. To answer this thread, I actually almost picked another thing he said to me. We were all on a bus heading to a meeting, and he sat next to me even though I told him no, and there were plenty of other seats. I stared out the window and ignored him the whole time. When we arrived, he asked me how my nap was. I said I wasn't sleeping, and he said, "No, I can tell when you're sleeping." Quit shortly after that, because my boss refused to separate us or do anything. Edit number 2. Just to address a couple comments so they don't get lost in the thread. Before I turned him down the second time, I actually liked him a lot. The first time I was clear and said no, but let's just carry on as we were. The second rejection was a, "Dude, I already said no, this time listen because I mean it." He was attractive, probably an 8 out of 10. I just wasn't interested like that. Sorry I didn't provide that context, but I didn't think it was an important detail. And I'm happy some of you think I'm overly paranoid. I'm glad you haven't had to prop yourself over a trash can because you can't stop puking and don't want to choke and die since you can't stay awake, all over one unfinished and tampered with drink. I'm glad you've never had to deck someone to keep them from sexually assaulting your friend and book it so you don't get arrested. I'm happy that's not something you've had to think about, because honestly it sucks to have to look at the world this way. Regardless of my degree and the knowledge it gave me, I don't have the luxury of assuming these things won't happen anymore, because they've happened to me directly. Regardless of what you may assume about my relationship with this person, his attractiveness, or my paranoia, no is a complete sentence. Reassurance is not needed, because I already said no. I don't know if this constitutes a horror story, but I did have one really weird date. Matched with this girl. We exchanged a few messages, and then she asked me to friend her on Facebook. I thought that was a bit weird, so I just ignored the message. Figured she'd forget about me. She's a woman on an online dating service, so she must get 50 messages a day, right? 3 days later, she messages me, or not. And I liked her spunk, so I figured, okay, why not? Friend her on FB, and messaged her later that night, and we ended up chatting for over hours. She was really cool, and we had tons in common, even weird idiosyncrasies. This was a week before Christmas. I was leaving on the 22nd for a week and a half, and she was leaving for a trip to Japan on Christmas, so we met up that Saturday. Had a fun time. She stayed over at my place, and the next day suggested we get together again that night. I was a bit taken aback that she wanted to hang out again already, but I said sure. Went to her place that night, had a nice time. The next day, before I left for work, she told me that I was the most genuine person she'd ever met and had no flaws, which seemed a hasty pronouncement, but I figured, hey, she seems confident and I guess she just knows what she wants, and I'm it. She and I both work in tech, and she also said several times how she was finally glad to meet an engineer that wasn't social awkward or downright weird. When I leave for work, she says we should get together again that night. I was leaving early the next day, and I asked her if she really wanted to hang out again, and she said that yeah, we were both going away, and it would be nice to see each other before we left. So I said sure, come over. So she comes over again, I leave for my trip the next day, and we spend the next few days texting back and forth. I was pretty happy, she seemed awesome, but maybe a bit hasty. While I was in Denver, she invited me on a trip back home to meet her parents. We had met less than a week before, and that seemed a bit fast, but whatever, she was just excited, I suppose. She told me she missed me a few times, and sent me tons of photos of herself, totally curated. Stuff you could post to Facebook, just her out and about doing things with friends and whatnot. Anyway, Christmas Day she leaves for Japan. Spends the next week and a half there. She's texting me less, but still sending me messages and photos every day. She's a bit less flirtatious than she had been, but I figured she was busy on her trip, and probably a bit stressed out from travel. She seemed like the anxious type. The night before she came back, I had already returned from mine. She tells me how she's looking forward to seeing me when she gets back, and she got me a gift that is kind of quirky yet very you. Which, again, seemed a bit weird since she didn't know me that well, but I figured that was just her style. She gets back the Tuesday after New Year's and invites me over that night. We hang out a bit, but she was really tired and not feeling well, jet-lagged, so I left after a few hours. Didn't hear from her for 3 days, but prior to going to Japan, she had already made plans to do something that Saturday night. It was emo night at a local bar. She was really into emo, which maybe should have been the first clue. So I figured I'd just see her then. And things had been moving a bit fast, so I figured maybe she just wanted some space and to rest from her trip. Finally, 3 days after seeing her, that Friday, she messages me in the evening with a long message that says how she had no romantic feelings for me anymore, and how I had moved things along too fast by messaging her, sending her photos of my trip, and saying I missed her. Which sounds reasonable out of context, but keep in mind she had been messaging me constantly, and had sent me tons of photos, and had asked me to send her photos of my trip. I hadn't for the first few days I was on my trip, and she told me she missed me several times. So her accusation was a bit confusing. The message continued into a second paragraph, saying that we had a lot in common but were very different people, and wanted different things from a relationship, which of course, we had not discussed what we were precisely looking for. Then it rambled a bit about how she needed space, and was going to spend the next few weeks catching up on work and helping her friend find a new job, which seemed a bit odd, too, detailing her upcoming life plans in a breakup note, but whatever. And then it ended with how I am a very nice and caring person, and can find someone who is a better match, yada yada yada. Then she disappeared. Haven't heard from her since. Strangely, she and I are still friends on Facebook, and she still follows me on Instagram. I stopped following her shortly after she broke up with me, but hasn't interacted with me at all.